A label on your panties digging into your most sensitive spots is definitely not the best feeling. Sure, you can cut it off, but often that just leaves even sharper corners that can be more annoying. But what if you've been cutting those labels wrong this whole time? Check it out. On the left, the label is sewn into the seam, while on the right, it's just hanging on by a couple of threads. Just snip those threads, and voila! It's like the label was never even there. Plus, with this little hack, you can always pick panties in the store that are guaranteed to be comfy. If you've traveled to Europe recently, you may have noticed how nasty the bottle caps have become. Yeah, according to the law, they now have to scratch your nose. They have to be attached right to the bottle. If these bottles annoy you too, try this. Once you open the bottle, rotate the cap 90 degrees and pull until one of the plastic connections breaks. And finally, turn the bottle until the cap touches your chin, not your nose, and drink. You've been using the colander in the wrong way all this time. This smart kitchen device has a hidden function. The traditional way of draining noodles involves dumping boiled noodles into a colander, right? But if your colander is about the same size as your pot, try this instead. Place the colander on top of the pot with the noodles, like a lid, and drain the water out. This method is faster and less messy, and it keeps your noodles in the pot where they belong. Toilet plungers and sink plungers are quite different, and the toilet version has a handy rubber flap called a flange that pops out from the cup. This flange fits snugly over toilet drains, giving you strong suction to tackle stubborn clogs. While a sink plunger won't help with toilet troubles, the toilet plunger can work on your sink or tub. Just make sure to keep that flap tucked inside the cup. And don't forget to give it a thorough clean with bleach before switching from toilet to sink use. You definitely don't want to mix things up. If you still work in an office, next time you print out something, make sure to check out this stapler built right into the printer. It can staple all the documents that fit in the slot at the same time. By the way, it's not something new. Such printers have been around since the 90s. Why buy a ruler and spend your hard-earned dollars if you can simply use a dollar bill to measure whatever you want? Only as long as this whatever is somewhere around 6 inches. A dollar bill is just about this size. Even though many people are sure that those tiny holes on the bottom left side of your iPhone are the speaker, they're actually a microphone. And speaking of iPhones, if you've got one of the latest models and your phone is out of juice but there's no socket to be found nearby, here's a nifty trick. Grab a double-ended charger cord and connect it to another iPhone 15. Boom! Your phone gets a little power boost. I bet you've noticed that the hook on a tape measure is a little loose. Well, that's intentional. The hook moves just enough to account for its own thickness, ensuring both inside and outside measurements are accurate. So if you ever thought it was broken, nope, it's just doing its job. As for the hole at the end, it's replacing the tape on the edge of a nail to get measurements from odd spots. The pockets on new suits are sewn shut to keep the jacket's shape during transportation and display. Of course, you can unpick them to use the pockets, but you need to be careful with what you put there. Anything heavy can easily distort the suit's shape. The important thing, though, is to remember to cut the threads holding the back vents together for better movement and comfort. Oh, and remember to cut those tacky stitches that fasten your new coat's vent, that flap on the back. Now, that sink squeegee thing actually hides a big secret. It can store water. Many sink squeegees have tiny holes that allow water to stay inside. But why would we need that water? Oh, you can release it as you squeegee, which will help you rinse the sink as you clean it. Here's a travel tip that will help you understand US highways. In the US, highways with even numbers run east-west, and those with odd numbers run north-south. If a highway number starts with an odd digit, it's a spur, which means it doesn't reconnect to the main highway. If it starts with an even digit, it's a loop around or through a city that eventually reconnects with the main highway. And finally, numbers divisible by 5 are major highways meant for cross-country travel. Your iPhone camera can also translate laundry symbols, identify plants, and even recognize some bird species. It's like having a mini encyclopedia in your pocket. Another trick: when using the markup feature while editing your photos, you might want to highlight a part of a picture. Put a circle around the needed area and keep your finger pressed down at the end of the stroke. Voila! Instead of a misshapen circle, you get a perfect one. It also works for squares, triangles, and stars. Barilla, probably the most famous pasta in the world, has teamed up with Spotify to create playlists that match the cooking time for different pasta shapes. Just start the playlist when you drop the pasta into boiling water. And when the music stops, your pasta is ready. Toasters have crumb trays at the bottom that you can and should clean regularly. Just slide it out and dump the crumbs. It's an easy way to keep your toaster clean and working well. You can use Google Maps to share your location in real time. Just tap your account icon, select Location Sharing, and choose how long to share. Your friends can track your progress and be ready when you arrive. You can also save your parking location by clicking the blue dot. Do you know that the knobs on some ovens have calibration screws on the back? You can adjust them to get more accurate temperature control. It'll definitely help you avoid overcooking or undercooking your meals. In non-prepaid gas stations in the US, try pressing Enter before swiping your debit or credit card. It'll take you to the prepaid screen, and you can enter the amount you need manually. If you're drinking outside on a windy day, place some coins in an empty cup, and then put the cup you're drinking from inside the first one. The weight of the coins will help you keep your drink from getting blown over. Simple, but effective. Once you've peeled your potato, you might spot some tiny divots, known as eyes, that still have some skin on them. Many peelers come with a handy scoop designed to tackle these little guys. Just take the scoop, dig in, and pop them out. Easy peasy. Your favorite potato recipe will be totally eye-free in no time. A cell phone's camera can help you to figure out whether your remote is working. The camera is sensitive to infrared, so you just need to turn it on and point the remote at the camera while pressing the remote's buttons. You'll see the LED flashing in response. If you spot nothing, something is definitely wrong with the remote. Bonus fact here: white vinegar isn't just for cooking, it's also the real laundry hero. If you add it to your laundry, it'll take out all the bad smells from your clothes. The amount to add can be anywhere from a splash to a cup during the wash. And don't worry about the vinegar smell. It washes away completely, leaving your clothes fresh. It's also great for removing hard water buildup.
Yep, your brain will grow by roughly 2% if you venture into space. Under normal gravity, it is thought that fluid in the brain naturally moves downwards when we stand upright. But there is evidence that lack of gravity prevents this, which is why fluid accumulates in the brain and skull. While a bunch of flowers may be fragrant for you, there are people with cacosmia who would beg to differ. They perceive all the smells out there as something odorous. Well, that stinks. Speaking of which, out of all the senses we have, smell is the most acute one. We remember 65% of smells after a year, but only 50% of what we've seen over the last 3 weeks. We also get a new nose every 28 days, because the nose cells are renewed every 4 weeks. We don't smell when we sleep. Well, of course, unless you haven't bathed in a while. Your sense of smell goes to sleep when you do, which is why it's almost impossible to notice a gas leak at night. While sleeping, we rely only on sound because the sleep can be disrupted by noise. Almost half of your taste buds will have gone away by the time you turn 60. So maybe you will finally start eating those broccoli. Your sense of smell gets less acute as you get older as well. As for taste again, we mostly rely on our smell since it helps us perceive up to 95% of the flavor. Without the sense of smell, it'd be hard to tell an apple from a turnip. Now, when you cough, you release the air at about 60 miles per hour, so mind the speed limit. Hiccups is a 2-step process. First, you draw in a lot of air because of a muscle spasm, and then bang! The airways are closed, the air is blocked, and the famous sound goes outside. We need ears, not only for hearing but for balance too. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny sensors helping you keep the balance. By the way, ears have bones. These are also the only bones that never grow. We can hear thanks to these little guys since they transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them oscular chain, and it's made up of malleus, incus, and stapes, nicknamed hammer, anvil, and stirrup, which are integral parts of the middle ear. Our ears keep growing throughout our lives. They sweat too, and earwax is actually a kind of sweat they produce. Oh, by the way, the nose never stops growing either, perhaps from all the lies. Your heart is the only muscle that never gets tired. The aorta is massive. Its diameter is almost as large as a hose in your garden. All the bones in our body are connected to each other except for the hyoid, which doesn't articulate with the other bones. This bone serves as support to your tongue, and it's one of the rarest bones to break. If you have red eyes in a photo, blame it on bouncing light. The flash jumps off the capillaries in your retina, creating that effect. As for eyes, the coolest camera so far has 200 megapixels. The human eye has 576. That's why sunsets are so much better in real life than in photos. A roller coaster actually tosses your organs around. When you feel like your stomach's falling down, it's really flipping inside your body. Lips are much more sensitive than fingers, having around 1 million nerve endings. They are 100 times as sensitive as the tips of the fingers. Grooves and furrows make our lip print unique, just like fingerprints are. They also remain unchanged throughout our life. Oh, the tongue print is unique too, by the way. Even though all the people on Earth have an absolutely unique smell, identical twins smell exactly the same. It must be because they have identical genes. Usually, we shed about 50 to 150 hairs a day. An average lifespan for hair is 5 years, and as soon as an old hair says goodbye to your scalp, a new one starts growing immediately. In your body, you carry enough bacteria to fill a can. Bacteria makes about 3 to 5 pounds of your weight, representing 2% of your total weight. Still, most of them are the waste that our body has. A human being has about 20,000 to 25,000 genes. Seems impressive, right? Well, cornflakes have more genes than we do. Luckily, it's about sophistication, not the quantity. Anyway, cornflakes 1, humans 0. We consist of many chemical elements, including iron. The iron in our bodies is enough to produce 3 nails, each 1 inch long. The carbon that we have can be used for 900 pencils. Our feathers can be used to make quill pens. Wait, that's birds. Never mind. Our liver has a superpower of regenerating if part of it was removed. It can grow back to the size that your body needs. Fat helps our bodies consume vitamins. Such vitamins as A, D, K, and E can be properly absorbed only when fat dissolved. Our bodies have enough fat to produce 7 bars of soap. Don't try this at home. When we're awake, our brain may produce enough energy to turn an electric bulb on. It has 10 watts of power. What's that about? Our belly buttons have an entire animal encyclopedia in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can be also found in the soil of Japan and even in polar ice caps. Our bodies actually glow. Anyway, we can't see that with an unaided eye because the light we emit is 1,000 times less intense than the minimum level we can perceive. Speaking of which, carmine used blushes and lipsticks is red dye made up of ground-up beetles. Oh. Saliva helps to taste food. Our taste buds are ready to perceive it only when it's dissolved by saliva. An eyelash is here to stay for 150 days only. The world eyelash record was about 3 inches long. They're also home for tiny mites. We blink about 4,200,000 times a year, at least once every 8 seconds. Could be cool if we were given a cent every time we blink. We could make more than $100 daily. It may sound crazy, but our bones are stronger than lots of building materials. A cubic inch of human bone can bear about 19,000 pounds, making it 4 times stronger than concrete. The only thing that makes our blood type different is sugar. AB and AB types have sugars, while O has none, which makes it perfect for donors. No sugar doesn't make O type less sweet. In fact, it attracts mosquitoes even more than the other blood types. People have only 8 blood types, while cows have 800 and possibly more. Like what? Mu positive and mu negative? Our fingernails grow way faster than toenails. They grow almost 4 times slower because they have less damage than fingernails. Even though we stumble on them often, sudden circulation bursts usually don't last long. Nails don't only help us catch random tiny objects and peel the stickers off. If you didn't have a rigid structure against which to press, you wouldn't be able to judge how firmly to hold anything. Very few people can actually digest milk. The thing is, there's some special enzyme, let's call it a little helper, that breaks down the sugars any milk has. When people grow up, they run out of this enzyme. This sugar's called lactose, so adults that can't digest it are lactose intolerant. 68% of the world's population can't actually digest milk. If you're sleeping, it doesn't mean your whole body rests. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. Humans can't multitask. Really? We need time to switch from one task to another, but if we try to tackle several things at the same time, it's not going to be very productive. Try this one. Lift your right foot and start rotating it in a clockwise direction. Try to write the number 6 with your big toe in the air. Now, check the direction your foot's moving. It's moving in the opposite direction because to write the number 6, you need to make a counterclockwise movement. It actually takes a bit longer to start a new habit. It's not 100% true that 18 or 21 days are enough, as many people think. The process of getting a new habit can take up to 254 days, but on average, it takes around 66 days for a new habit to become automatic.
There's some weird tickling in your nose. Oh no, you're gonna sneeze. It'll sound thunderous in the complete silence of the conference room. Not to draw unwanted attention, tickle the roof of your mouth with your tongue. 5 to 10 seconds is usually enough to get rid of the urge to sneeze. Or you can pinch your nose at the nostrils, like you do when something nearby smells bad. Pinching the bridge of your nose just below your eyebrows can help too. But whatever you do, don't look at bright lights. About 1/3 of people sneeze when they look at the sun, or even a light bulb. Imagine you're talking to someone, and they just wouldn't let you get a word in. If you think it's rude to interrupt them, drop whatever you have in your hands, if it's not your phone or laptop, that is. Or you can pretend to be clumsy and knock something over. In any case, the chances are it'll make them realize they've been talking for too long. Getting stressed out before an important event is a perfectly normal reaction. But it can make you absent-minded, and you won't be able to concentrate. If you realize you've become tense, squeeze the muscles of your face, arms, and shoulders. Clench your fists. Now, relax and take a deep breath. You're ready to tackle any problem on your way. Your throat's tickling. It doesn't seem to be too much of a bother, but once this annoying sensation starts, it doesn't let you concentrate on anything else. To get rid of it, scratch your ear. This way, you'll stimulate the nerves there. Your body's likely to react with a muscle spasm in the throat. This spasm will relieve the tickle. You might feel ill at ease starting a difficult conversation. It makes you fidget, avert your eyes, shift your weight. Denying your anxiety will make the situation even more awkward than it already is. It's better to offer a quick explanation. I feel a bit uncomfortable bringing it up. You need to introduce someone to your friend, but their name has totally slipped your mind. Apologize and claim you've been so busy recently that you're having brain fog. Most people these days understand what a hectic schedule can do to a person. Another way to find out someone's name, that you're supposed to know by now, is to ask for their business card. Or you can give them your phone and ask to put in their contact information. Then, all you need to do is look at the new contact before tucking your phone away. You can also ask the person to spell their name, saying you want to make sure you've got it right. There's no need to shout to be heard at a loud party. Ask the person you're chatting with to bend their ear out and then press it in. They'll hear you much better. To stop hiccuping, put a long straw in a glass or bottle with water. Block both ears with your fingers and start drinking. Or you can try covering a glass of cold water with a paper towel or clean cloth and sip through it. Gently squeezing your nose while drinking something helps too. Another trick is to sit down and bring your knees up to your chest. Hug them for 2 minutes or so. You can also inhale a large gulp of air and hold your breath for as long as you can. Usually, 10 to 20 seconds are enough. Slowly breathe out. If you're still hiccuping after that, repeat several more times. Or grab the tip of your tongue and gently pull on it once or twice. It stimulates the muscles and nerves in your throat. But don't forget to wash your hands before doing it. If you feel you're getting emotional and tears are about to spill, look up and hold your breath for a couple of seconds. Then slowly exhale. You should feel better now. The meeting's over. Time to leave the room. Only, you can't pick up your notes. Your arm's fallen asleep. Try clenching and unclenching your fist. It'll get the blood flowing, which will ease the nerves. You can also gently rock your head from side to side. When the nerves in your neck get squeezed, it can lead to tingly hands and arms. Rocking your head will loosen your neck muscles and release the pressure. Phones love autocorrecting your messages into something embarrassing. If you notice your blunder after already having sent the message, you can either apologize or laugh it off. Something like, "Wow, my phone apparently has a mind of its own." An important meeting is about to start, but you feel more than a bit sleepy. Not to doze off while your boss is giving a presentation, take a deep breath and hold it for several seconds. Then release it. You'll feel a bit more energized. It's common to feel awkward, nervous, or shy when talking to new people. Instead of blushing or looking away, follow the 3 seconds of eye contact rule. It won't make you feel uncomfortable, but will show your interest. If someone's explaining something to you, eye contact can be a bit longer than 3 seconds. It's a sure way to prove you're paying attention. Anxiety can get the best of you at the worst possible moment. To deal with this problem, set aside a time slot for your worries. Carve out 15 minutes every day and worry all you want. But once the time's over, you have to stop thinking about the things that make you nervous. Try not to do it right before going to bed, though. This can make it harder to fall asleep afterward. If you feel nervous before an interview or exam, chew some gum. For some reason, eating makes your brain feel safe. You're literally tricking it into a relaxed state. After you eat something extremely cold, like a popsicle, the nerves in the roof of your mouth start freezing. Your body concludes that your brain is getting chilled too. To compensate, it overheats, which leads to an ice cream headache. Instead of scrunching your face and moaning, press your tongue against the roof of your mouth. This will warm it up almost immediately. Try to cover as much space as you can. When you ask for something you need, always use the word because. It makes people believe there's a serious reason for your request. It happens even to the best of us. A song gets stuck in your head, and it's usually either a commercial jingle or a popular song you've been making fun of. When it happens, you're likely to repeat one part of the song, most often the chorus, again and again. Try singing the song till the very end. It'll make your brain think the song's over, and the tune won't bother you anymore. If you're feeling dizzy, put your hand on something stable. In most cases, it'll help your brain to recalculate your body's position in space, and your dizziness will pass. If you want to ace an important interview, imagine you've known the interviewer for ages. Picture how you're going to greet each other, shake hands, and have a pleasant conversation. This will help you relax before the big event. Let's say you want to leave an awkward conversation, but are unsure of the best time to do it. Each conversation has times when it drops off and has a lull in it. It usually happens before people start a new topic. Such a lull is your cue it's time to leave. Start with, well, sorry, or anyway, before saying your goodbye and fleeing. You can't stand it anymore. You need to get away from this bore you've started talking to at a party, and the sooner the better. Not to hurt their feelings or encourage the person to follow you. Say you need to make a phone call. It's a safer option than saying you're going to go get some food or go to the bathroom. To make your excuse more believable, provide some details. You can easily give an impression of an outgoing person at a party. Pick someone and ask them a random question, like, "I love your shoes. Where did you get them?" It'll be a perfect icebreaker. People just love talking about themselves.
At first, it may seem like the sun is burning, but it's actually not true, because the burning of our star isn't chemical combustion, it's nuclear fusion. The sun can't run out of oxygen or stop burning because it doesn't use oxygen to burn. Regular carbon combustion requires oxygen. As soon as there's no oxygen, the process of burning stops. Now imagine a candle. If you cover it, it doesn't have access to oxygen anymore, and the process of burning stops. But in nuclear fusion, the nuclei of atoms are fused together to make new, bigger nuclei. Such changes cause atoms to become new elements. Nuclear fusion doesn't require oxygen or any other material altogether. You just need enough pressure or heat to squeeze the nuclei of atoms close enough for them to overcome their electrostatic repulsion and bond into one nucleus. In 2027, 2 teams of astronomers discovered a cloud of water floating in open space. It was the largest and farthest reservoir of water ever detected in the universe. It's a cloud of water vapor surrounding a huge black hole called a quasar, 12 billion light-years away from Earth. The environment around the quasar must be unique to somehow produce such giant masses of water. It was formed by energy waves colliding hydrogen and oxygen atoms together. The cloud contains 140 trillion times the entire volume of water on our planet. It could provide each person on our planet with a planet's worth of water 20,000 times over. Wow! Even cooler, astronomers believe this water cloud appeared just 1.6 billion years later than the universe itself. Scientists consider it another demonstration that water exists throughout the universe and was present already during its early days. At the same time, before this discovery, scientists had never found water vapor present so far back in the early universe. There is water in our home Milky Way galaxy, but most of it is frozen in ice. Not only water is floating out there in space, alcohol too. In 2009, scientists were examining a massive cloud of gas and dust in the center of our galaxy when they stumbled upon a surprise. There was ethyl formate within the cloud. This chemical is responsible for the sweet flavor of raspberries. They also found one more cool region. This one was brimming with ethyl alcohol, the same type found in many beverages. At the North Pole of Saturn, a mysterious storm is raging. It's ginormous, spanning an area larger than our planet and showcasing a beautiful but baffling hexagonal pattern. No one has understood yet why the storm has such a bizarre shape. After the hexagon was first discovered in 1987, it remained hidden in darkness up to the moment when sunlight exposed it again. Soon afterward, the Cassini spacecraft, designed to explore the Saturn system, provided a series of captivating images and even a video of the hexagonal storm. It turned out to be colossal in size. Its estimated depth is around 180 miles, and the eye of the storm is 50 times as large as the typical storm on Earth. The storm is also changing its color from blue to gold. Winds of hydrogen and ammonia surround the storm and move at more than 300 miles per hour. The storm has several centers. Some of them move clockwise, and others follow a counterclockwise direction. The largest vortex appears to be white, and it's twice larger than the standard hurricane on our planet. As for the hexagon itself, it's a jet stream made up of atmospheric gases. Experts refer to it as just a current of air and weather features. But there is one intriguing detail: a vortex sitting at a higher altitude than Saturn's clouds. It looks like a large towering structure. Saturn's auroras, triggered by the planet's magnetic field, are located atop of the hexagon, giving its appearance a mystical vibe. Astronomers have found a giant, likely active volcano near Mars's equator. It was literally hiding in plain sight. It's ancient and deeply eroded, but seems to be still functioning. There may even be remnants of a glacier ice near its base. That's why this discovery might indicate a promising new location to search for life, as well as a potential destination for future human and robotic exploration. The structure is still awaiting its official name. At the moment, it's referred to as the Noctis volcano. It reaches a height of 29,600 feet and spans an impressive 280 miles across. Such a giant size indicates that the volcano has been active for a very long time. In its southeastern part, there's a thin, recent volcanic deposit, and beneath, glacier ice might still be present. At a distance of 700 million light-years away from Earth, there's a gaping hole, a blank void with no galaxies, stars, planets, or asteroids, literally nothing. The void is a roughly spherical region about 330 million light-years across. Our home Milky Way galaxy could fit there billions of times over. That's the mysterious Bootes void. It lies in the constellation of Bootes, the herdsman driving the plow around the North Pole. At first, this void had the name of the Great Nothing, but later it was given its current name. Now, we know that galaxies look like a giant web. Most of them are parts of long structures called filaments. Those wind through the cosmos, and when they meet, they form regions with a high concentration of galaxies. These regions are what we know as galaxy clusters, but between these clusters and threads, there are enormous empty voids that hardly contain any galaxies. Such voids actually make up almost 80% of the observable universe, and most of them are huge, from 30 to 300 million light-years wide. The Bootes void is one of the most massive ones. It has even earned the title of supervoid. Astronomers think it might be the result of a few smaller voids merging together. There is a diamond planet out there that orbits a star in the constellation of Cancer, completing one full rotation in a mere 18 Earth hours. The planet's scientific name is 55 Cancri E. The radius of this faraway world is twice as large as Earth's, and its mass is 8 times greater. The planet is scorching hot, the temperatures on the day side reaching almost 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But the coolest thing about 55 Cancri E is that, according to some specialists, at least a third of the planet's mass could be diamond. That's the equivalent of around 3 masses of our home planet. Sounds like big money floating out there in space. How about we calculate how much this planet could be worth? Wait, someone has already done it, and the number is astronomical, pun intended, of course. It's 26.9 nonillion. And if you're confused by this number as I am, that's 26.9 followed by 30 zeros. Now, for comparison, one of the most expensive diamonds on Earth ever is the Cullion. It costs a whopping $2 billion, and its original weight was a mind-boggling 3,106.75 carats. It was, and still is, the largest raw gem diamond ever found. Later, it was cut into many small diamonds. The largest of them is Cullion 1, which also goes by the name of Star of Africa. It has a carat weight of about 530, but imagine how much bigger and more expansive the Diamond Planet is. Nebulas are gigantic clouds of gas and dust, and some of them can have really unusual shapes, as if they were made this way on purpose. With time, gravity starts to pull these clumps of dust and gas together. They grow larger and larger, and their gravity gets more powerful. One day, this mass becomes so big that it collapses under its own gravity and forms new stars. Among some of the most beautiful nebulas out there, we must mention the Butterfly Nebula. Its wingspan is more than 3 light-years, and the structure inside the nebula is one of the most complicated ever observed. The central star, a white dwarf, is heated to an incredible 450,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It means it formed from a giant gargantuan star, likely more than 5 times the size of our Sun. The white dwarf is surrounded by a thick disk of dust and gas at the equator. It's what probably makes the whole structure look like an hourglass or a butterfly. The Ring Nebula looks like a giant cloud of dust and gas surrounding an old, almost extinguished star. At first sight, it does look like a ring, but astronomers say the nebula isn't a bagel, it's a jelly-filled donut. They must be hungry. The deep space colorful object, more than 2,000 light-years away from Earth, is actually a ring that wraps around a blue ball-shaped structure. Each end of the structure sticks out of the ring's opposite sides. The pillars of creation look like something out of this world. See for yourself. They're located 7,000 light-years away from Earth in the Eagle Nebula. That's a young cluster of stars just 5.5 million years old. On a space scale, they're just babies. Once, the Hubble Space Telescope managed to take an image of several dark silhouettes near the nebula's center. And now you can see them with your own eyes. Those are the so-called pillars of creation, an active star-forming region. Look at this famous image. The blue colors represent oxygen, red is sulfur, and green means the presence of both hydrogen and nitrogen. The pillars are also bathed in the ultraviolet light coming from a nearby cluster of young stars. Unfortunately, the winds from those stars are slowly but steadily eroding the magnificent towers of gas and dust. Far out in space, a ghostly, super-ancient galaxy is floating all alone. It shines with a faint glimmer of starlight and has hardly changed for billions of years. Astronomers have no idea why it's there or how it formed. Meet DGSATI, a living fossil galaxy. It's as big as the Milky Way, but is nearly invisible because its stars are spread out incredibly thinly. But what makes the galaxy so unique is that it's sitting all alone, unlike other galaxies of this kind, which are usually found in clusters. It might mean that DGSATI was formed in a different era, probably a mere 1 billion years after the Big Bang. If it's true, the galaxy is a real living fossil. Astronomers have discovered the most massive stellar black hole ever spotted in our home Milky Way galaxy. This newly found space monster is 33 times bigger than the Sun and sits 2,000 light-years away from us. Until recently, the largest stellar black hole found residing in our galaxy has been around 20 times as big as our star in terms of mass. As for the average stellar mass black hole, it's usually about 10 times as hefty as the Sun. Scientists spotted the giant black hole after a star started to wobble while orbiting in that area. The black hole got the name of Gaia BH3. The proximity of this space object to Earth makes it the second closest to our planet black hole ever discovered. The nearest one is called Gaia BH1. Makes sense. It's hanging out around 1,560 light-years away from us. This uncomfortably close neighbor has a mass of around 9.6 times that of the Sun. That means it's way smaller than the newly found black hole. Gaia BH3 is located in the Aquila constellation. From Earth, it seems to have the shape of an eagle. Interestingly, astronomers didn't expect to find a high-mass black hole lurking so relatively close to Earth and remaining undetected for so long. Now look at this marvelous exoplanet. It resembles a giant eyeball hanging out there in space. But it isn't the coolest thing about it. This distant world, identified in 2017, is one of the most promising places for finding life outside our solar system. The exoplanet is called LHS 1140b, and it shows signs of having a global ocean capped in ice. It's that very iris, a huge region around 2,500 miles across, which is constantly gazing at its host star. The planet has a radius of about 1.73 times the radius of Earth, and is 5.6 times as massive as our home planet. The giant eyeball planet orbits much more closely to its star than Earth does. It needs just around 25 days to complete an entire orbit. If the star were similar to our Sun, such a distance would definitely be too close for life to appear on the planet. But instead, it's a cool and dim red dwarf. That's why the exoplanet lies in the habitable zone of its star, where it's not so cold that all surface water would freeze, and not so close that this water would steam away. At the moment, LHS 1140b looks like the most promising candidate for hosting life in our planetary neighborhood. Solar flares are extremely powerful bursts of electromagnetic radiation that can last from minutes to hours. They occur when there's some magnetic disturbance in the Sun. Then, magnetic field lines in the atmosphere of our star get tangled and snap. This releases giant amounts of excess energy, including ultraviolet radiation and intense X-rays. These twisted lines appear in sunspots. Those are darker and cooler regions on the surface of the Sun. They form when magnetic fields that used to hide deep within our star rise up to the surface. As for coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, which are launched by solar flares, they're sent outward into space. They hit planets, satellites, and basically any objects in their path. Those that come across Earth trigger geomagnetic storms, which in most cases result not only in beautiful auroras, but also in power grid failures and satellite malfunctions. All these extreme solar phenomena, CMEs, sunspots, and solar flares, get much more intense during the peak of the Sun's 11-year-long activity cycle. It's known as solar maximum. Right before this event, the Sun steps up its activity. It starts to spit out giant blobs of fiery plasma, emits powerful streams of radiation, and grows planet-sized spots. At first, experts were sure that the current solar cycle would reach its peak in 2025. But judging by recent numerous sunspots, intense solar storms, and some other rare solar phenomena, solar maximum is likely to arrive sooner than that. This planet is as light as a piece of fluff stuck to your jacket. In the scientific world, its name is WASP 193b, but we'll call it the Cotton Candy Planet. It's located around 1,200 light-years from us. We'll never see it with our own eyes, but scientists say the Cotton Candy Planet is pretty much Jupiter's bigger, bouncier cousin. It has an extremely low density. Combined with other factors, like its high temperature and the infrared brightness of its host star, it makes it special. Interestingly, the planet's radius is just 1.46 times the radius of Jupiter, but its mass is a mere 0.139 times of our gas giant. May I have a close-up here, please? Thank you. See how fluffy it is? It would be absolutely impossible to stand on its surface should you ever reach this distant world. It's not often that you can meet something like WASP 193b at a planetary party. Such planets are rare. Their fluffiness might be caused by their planet stars. Those heat them, puffing them up like a marshmallow that's seen too much campfire action. The planet's super low density makes it a real anomaly among those 5,000 plus exoplanets we have already discovered.
Some men wear shoes with hidden heel lifts to look taller. Such shoes can make a person up to 6 inches taller. They look like regular shoes, but inside they have this extra insert. Sometimes such an insert is glued down. Sometimes it's removable, and you can choose the height you need yourself. When the Titanic hit the iceberg and sank sometime later, the Atlantic Ocean was around 28 degrees Fahrenheit, which means the water was below its freezing point. No wonder so many passengers didn't make it. Some birds have a row of bristles protruding from the edges of their eyelids. Those bristles can probably be called eyelashes, but while human eyelashes are modified hairs meant to protect the eye, bird eyelashes are modified feathers. Identical twins don't actually have the same fingerprints, so you can't blame your misdeeds on your sibling after all. Different factors during development in the womb, like the position of the womb, umbilical cord length, and the rate of finger growth, impact fingerprints. Earth's rotation speed is changing. It's slowing down right now while we're talking. It means that, on average, the length of the day gets 1.8 seconds longer every century. 600 million years ago, a day lasted a mere 21 hours. Most world maps are wrong. On the majority of maps, they still use the Mercator projection, which was the first developed in 1569. But this method is very inaccurate and makes Alaska look as large as Brazil, while in reality, it's 5 times smaller. As for Greenland, it looks 14 times larger than it actually is. For a map to be precise, it would need to be life-sized and round, not flat. Ants don't have lungs. They breathe through tiny openings known as spiracles. An ant may have 9 or 10 of those on each side of the body, depending on the species. The average color of the universe is poetically called cosmic latte. In a 2002 study, scientists discovered that the light coming from other galaxies averaged into a beige color that was very close to white, just like the drink beloved by many. There is such a thing as minus decibels. The quietest place on Earth is Microsoft's anechoic chamber in Redmond, USA. The level of sound there is minus 20.6 decibels. Such chambers are built out of heavy concrete and bricks and are placed on springs to stop vibrations from entering the chamber through the floor. Bananas are radioactive. Wait, where did you go? It's not that bad. Bananas are rich in potassium, so each banana is slightly radioactive due to the natural isotope potassium-40. On the other hand, your body contains around 16 milligrams of potassium-40, so you're actually about 280 times more radioactive than that poor banana. And in any case, your body gets rid of that excess potassium-40 from a banana within several hours. There's simply no such thing as a straight line. You just need to zoom in close enough and you're bound to spot some irregularities. Even a laser light beam is a bit curved. In emergencies, fish form orderly lines. For example, when evacuating through narrow spaces in dangerous situations, school of neon tetrafish queue so that they don't crash into one another or clog up the line. Scientists think that this behavior means that fish can respect social rules even in emergency situations. Unlike us humans. Hippos can't swim. These animals have large bones. These bones are so big and dense that it makes hippos barely buoyant at all. So these animals don't swim. Instead, they perform something like a slow-motion gallop on the riverbed. Hippos can also sleep underwater thanks to a reflex that allows them to rise to the surface, take a breath, and sink back down to the bottom without waking up. Lego bricks can withstand compression better than concrete. A regular plastic Lego brick can support the weight of 375,000 other bricks before it breaks. Theoretically, it could allow you to build a tower more than 2 miles in height. But if we decide to scale this up to house-sized bricks, the price would be exorbitant. If you ever go to space, you can take your yo-yo with you. In 2012, NASA astronaut Don Petit took a yo-yo on board the International Space Station and used it to show some tricks. You see, a yo-yo mostly relies on the laws of conservation of angular momentum to perform tricks. And if you keep the string taut, these laws apply in microgravity too. There's a theory that claims that we sweat when we're anxious to alert the brains of other people that they're primed for that danger that's making us feel anxiety. Brain scans have revealed that when you sniff the sweat produced by a panicking person, regions of the brain responsible for emotional and social signals light up. And when you are anxious, your sympathetic nervous system produces hormones, including adrenaline, which switches on your sweat glands. There are rainbows on Venus, and they're called glories. A glory looks like a series of colored concentric rings and is caused by the interference of light waves inside droplets rather than the process of reflection, refraction, and dispersion of light, which produces rainbows. Protons look like bagels, spheres, peanuts, and rugby balls. In other words, protons come in different shapes and sizes. Their appearance changes based on the speed of quirks, smaller particles within them. If you look at the moon while being in the southern hemisphere, it will seem to be upside down, and the man on the moon will look more like a rabbit. You will remember more of your dreams if you sleep badly and wake up many times throughout the night. You're also more likely to remember your dream if someone or something wakes you up in the middle of it. Dogs tilt their heads while listening to people to pinpoint familiar words like walkies more effectively. It also helps them to understand the tone of your voice better. There's also an idea that if a dog doesn't tilt its head often, it's because it relies more on sight and less on sound. Mirrors facing each other won't produce infinite reflections. Each next reflection will be darker than the previous one, and eventually, they will fade into invisibility. Mirrors absorb just a fraction of the energy of the light falling on them, so the total number of reflections mirrors can produce is around several hundred. You can smell ants, since many species of these insects produce strong-smelling chemicals when they feel threatened or angry, or when they're being squished. Trapjaw ants release a chocolatey smell when they're crushed, and citronella ants give off a lemony odor when they're threatened. Giraffes hum when they want to communicate with each other. Researchers think that this low-frequency humming might be a form of contact call between individuals that have been separated from their herd. It can also help giraffes find each other in the dark. But the coolest thing about these magnificent animals? Some scientists think that they could sleep talk too. And a cool bonus story for you, about a marathon runner who took over 50 years to finish the race. Japanese marathoner runner Shizo Kanekuri was selected as one of the 2 athletes that Japan could send to the 1912 Stockholm Olympics. But Kanekuri shockingly disappeared during the marathon race. It turned out that after a rough 18-day-long trip to Stockholm, first by ship and then by train, the man was exhausted. During the race, he stopped running because his condition simply didn't allow him to run further. The athlete stumbled into a nearby garden party where he drank orange juice and stayed for a while to recover. Later, Kanekuri was so embarrassed by his failure that he returned to Japan without notifying anyone, including race officials. So, Swedish authorities considered him missing for 50 years before finding out that he was peacefully living in his home country. In 1967, the athlete was offered the opportunity to finish his run. He accepted. 54 years, 8 months, 6 days, 5 hours, 32 minutes, and 20.3 seconds after he started the race, he completed the marathon. It was a long trip. Along the way, the man got married, had 6 kids, and 10 grandchildren.
Harvard biologists have uncovered a truly bizarre frog species that sports extendable claws, much like those of a cat. This hairy frog breaks its own bones to produce claws that puncture through its toe pads, likely when it feels threatened. Some salamanders push their ribs through their skin to create protective barbs, but scientists have seen nothing quite like this claw mechanism before. 9 out of 11 frogs in this genus have this feature, and most of them live in Cameroon. A bee's life doesn't have to end after it stings you. Some of them can carefully take out the stinger without passing away later. The bee starts circling around until it loosens and takes out the barbed stinger. After that, it just flies away without leaving any marks on your skin. Unlike wasps, which are carnivorous and can be aggressive, bees are mostly peaceful creatures. They either stay in their hive or move from flower to flower, helping to spread life on Earth because they're crucial for pollination. For bees, stinging is a last resort because it means demise for them, so they can choose not to do it to save themselves. You probably have heard that a salamander can regrow its tail if it loses it completely. Well, Mexican tetra, also known as the blind cavefish, goes further and can grow back its heart. Well, sort of. It won't get a new, full heart overnight, but it can regenerate its tissues. Scientists decided it could be useful for us humans, as they're studying these fish, to see what's their secret, and why not all animals can play the same trick. Thorny devil dragon lizard surely agrees with the proverb, 2 heads are better than 1. The knob growing from its back serves as a false head to trick whoever is after it. They also have a special camouflage coloring and a scary spiny body for extra protection. And if it doesn't sound cool enough, they also drink with their feet. Now that's a handy feature when you live in the scorching hot desert. The water goes directly from their feet to their mouths through little grooves between scales. Meanwhile, some flies have eyes on stalks. It might sound strange, but those stalks are super useful. First off, they give the fly amazing vision, so good they can even peek around corners. Secondly, these stalks can be used as tools to push away rivals, and the longer the stalks and the wider the eyes are set, the more attractive the male fly appears to females. It's like their way of showing off that they're strong and have good genes. Spiders have some seriously awesome biological tricks up their sleeves, or legs. Spinning giant webs of incredible strong silk to catch bad guys is a real superpower, and Darwin's bark spider is especially good at it. This spider can weave massive webs that stretch across entire bodies of water, with anchor strands that reach up to 82 feet long. Scientists were curious about how strong this spider silk really is, so they put it to the test. They discovered that Darwin's bark spider silk is twice as tough as any other silk and 10 times stronger than Kevlar, which is an ideal body armor material. The web can handle insane amounts of kinetic energy before breaking, ensuring that no tiny insect or villain can escape its web. The real Hulk of the animal world is the male horned dung beetle. It is the strongest animal in the world. This little powerhouse can pull 1,140 times its own body weight. Its secret to success is its desire to find a partner. Female dung beetles dig cozy tunnels under piles of dung for mating. When more than one male shows up, the competitors lock horns and wrestle each other out of the tunnel. Smaller beetles also have a chance though, as they can move faster and slip into the tunnel more easily. Meanwhile, an alpine ibex has the superpower of defying gravity. Yep, it can scale steep rock walls just to get a lick of salt to complement its vegetarian diet. It's like when you storm the nearest grocery store for some late-night snacks. Back in the animal world, ibexes use concrete as an unconventional salt lick. Animals can't live without salt. They need it for their nerves and muscles to function properly. Wild goats have these rock-climbing skills thanks to the elastic and rubbery pads on their hooves. They help them grip the rocks, and a hard, sharper outer hoof edge hooks into the tiny rough spots on the rock surface. Now, the pistol shrimp is just 1.5 inches long, but it can snap its claws at a speed of 60 miles per hour. That creates a bubble in the water that forms a vacuum, and it sends a powerful water pulse that can stun prey. The snap is so intense that it generates a noise of 218 decibels, louder than a gunshot, and a temperature that is as hot as the sun's surface. There's even a brief flash of light. Some scientists are thinking of creating a mechanical version of the pistol shrimp to use in medical practice or for a new type of compression engine. Now, if you go hiking in the trails of the Pacific Northwest, keep an eye on the ground and any decaying trees for some bright yellow spots moving along. These are the keels of a dark centipede about 2 inches long. If you pick one up, it will curl into a spiral and release hydrogen cyanide, giving off a strong almond scent. This amount isn't enough to seriously mess up a human. It can just stain your skin or give you an uncomfortable feel if you're sensitive. So be sure to wash your hands after handling one. But the same amount can take down a bird or a rodent. Speaking of birds, crows can count vocally up to 4. They're a lot like human toddlers when it comes to learning to count and quickly identify the number of objects they see. Scientists trained 3 carrion crows to make a certain number of calls between 1 and 4 when they showed them a specific symbol or audio cue. All 3 birds mastered the task like pros, with some minor mistakes like 1 caw too many or too few. Crows can also plan ahead and communicate with each other in a structured way. Cowbirds, on the other hand, have secret passwords they use to recognize each other. They're a type of parasite bird, something like a cuckoo, and they lay their eggs in other bird species' nests. This means the little cowbirds can't learn their real parents' calls and would have trouble as adults to find a mate of their kind. That's why they have an inner mechanism where they recognize their species singing like some sort of secret password that only they know. Meanwhile, ghost crabs growl when they're around creatures they don't like or find threatening. They first show claws to intruders in their personal space to make them feel unwelcome. If that's not enough, they'll go for fearsome growling noises, like dogs. That sound is coming from rubbing their 3 elongated, hard teeth inside their stomach. Teeth in your stomach. Ghost crabs make the same noise when they're grinding up food. When a puffin feels like it could use a good scratch, nothing can stop it from solving the problem. Researchers notice these birds pick up a small wooden stick to itch themselves. The authors think puffins might need sticks to knock off seabird ticks. Looks like it's more effective than using its own beak. There's an Indian elephant named Koshik who lives in South Korea and can imitate words just like parrots do. Koshik can pronounce the Korean words for yes, no, sit, lie down, and 4 other words. He puts his trunk inside his mouth and shakes it while exhaling to change the tone and pitch of the sounds he produces. If you can whistle with your fingers in the mouth, it's a lot like that. Well, it turns out black holes might not be as elusive as we once thought. They might be hiding within stars. In this case, the extra mass of some of these space lanterns could explain weird gravitational effects in the universe. Previously, dark matter was the cause of these phenomena. The black holes I'm talking about might be those itty-bitty ones that appeared at the dawn of time when the universe was just a baby. And they may still be lurking in the hearts of giant stars. A team of scientists say the idea might be quite plausible. Astronomers could detect such trapped black holes by the vibrations they produce on their star's surfaces. And if there are many of them out there in the cosmos, they might function as the very dark matter that holds the universe together. Almost any black hole was once a massive star that collapsed in on itself and became incredibly dense. Black holes have immense gravitational pull. Even light can't escape their clutches. People often think that black holes work like vacuums, pulling space inside. But that's not the case. Black holes can only swallow stuff that is extremely close, usually space objects venturing into their event horizon. That's a black hole's point of no return. Once you cross this border, there's no escape. In 1971, renowned physicist Stephen Hawking suggested another origin of black holes. If we took the thick soup of particles that appeared moments after the Big Bang and the birth of the universe, we'd be bound to find some spots dense enough to collapse and create black holes. Such holes, which got the name of primordial black holes, could range in size from microscopic to gigantic. If they were pervasive and numerous enough, primordial black holes could act as dark matter, knitting the cosmos together with their enormous gravity. And dark matter is believed to make up 85% of all the matter in the universe. So what's the matter? Astronomers have been searching for primordial holes by looking for flashes that would occur when they pass in front of distant bright objects, magnifying their light like a lens. But they haven't spotted even one yet. On the other hand, if a primordial black hole was tiny enough, with a mass like that of an asteroid and a diameter as minuscule as a hydrogen atom, the flashes wouldn't be bright enough to be detected by such surveys. Then the team, researching the phenomenon of primordial black holes, decided to consider the consequences of a universe where dark matter was made entirely out of tiny black holes. They concluded that one of such teensy holes could be dashing through the solar system at any given time. Some might occasionally get trapped within gas clouds, giving birth to new stars, ending up in their centers. The next step of the researchers was to build a model of a black hole existing in the very core of a star, where hydrogen atoms undergo fusion and produce light and heat. At first, they didn't see anything unusual. Even a super-dense stellar core is mostly empty space, and it wouldn't be easy for a microscopic black hole to find matter to consume there. That's why its growth would be incredibly slow. It could take longer than the lifetime of the universe for this tiny hole to eat a star. But what if a larger hole, as massive as the dwarf planet Pluto or asteroid Ceres, appeared at the center of a star? Then it would get bigger in a matter of a few 100 million years. The material would keep spiraling into the black hole, creating a disk that would heat up because of friction, emitting radiation. Once the black hole grew to the size of Earth, it would start emitting even more radiation, shining extremely brightly. It would also be churning up the star's core, and the star itself would turn into a black hole-powered rather than a fusion-powered object. Such entities were dubbed Hawking stars. To cool off, the exterior of a Hawking star would form a red giant. That's what our Sun is likely to turn into as it gets older. But a red giant star with a primordial black hole at its center would be cooler than the stars that have reached this stage through regular means. Such stars are known as red stragglers. To find out whether they indeed host a black hole, astronomers might need to tune into the frequencies at which stars vibrate. Since a Hawking star would mostly affect the interior of the star rather than its topmost layers, the star would thrum with a certain combination of frequencies. The waves created in the process could be detected in a way the star's light would pulse and throb. So, all scientists need to do now is study the already known red stragglers and figure out whether any of them show the characteristic vibrations of a black hole. Now, should we worry about the Sun? Since our star hasn't reached its red giant stage yet, we can't know whether it'll turn into a cool red straggler. What we know, though, is that our star might contain those tiny black holes that formed in the Big Bang. But now, we have no means to check whether they're indeed there. Currently, our star is around the midpoint of its existence, middle-aged. It creates energy non-stop by fusing hydrogen atoms within its core. Once it runs out of hydrogen in its core, it will enter its red giant phase and begin to collapse. It'll happen in about 5 billion years, don't hold your breath, and the phase itself will last for 1 billion years or so before our star depletes its fusible materials and loses its outer layers. It will leave behind a tiny white dwarf star half as massive as the Sun and around the size of our planet. In some cases, when the gravitational collapse of a star's core is complete, the star remnants turn into a black hole. But that's not the fate awaiting our Sun. You see, our star just doesn't have what it takes to become a black hole. It's not heavy enough. There are a few conditions that can affect whether a star can turn into a black hole, including its composition, rotation, and the processes that lead to its evolution. But the main requirement is still the right mass. Stars with 20 to 25 times the mass of the Sun can potentially experience the gravitational collapse needed to form black holes. In other words, the Sun is simply too small to form a black hole. But what would happen to us if it did? You might assume that if the Sun turned into a black hole, our planet would be doomed to be pulled into it. But do you remember the basics? Black holes aren't giant space vacuum cleaners, just sitting there and waiting for a new planet or star to get their hands on. Mwah. But black holes don't have enough gravitational force beyond that created by their incredible mass. And if the Sun were to turn into a black hole, which will not happen, this hole would still have the same mass as our former star, and Earth's orbit around this newly formed black hole wouldn't change. But all other things would change dramatically. The Sun, which is currently around 432,000 miles in radius, would shrink to a mere 1.9 miles in radius. But you wouldn't be concerned with the absence of the bright yellow sphere in the sky, since you have many more pressing issues on your hands. Our planet's main heat source would be gone, leaving us frozen in the dark. Without this source of energy, photosynthesis would immediately stop, disrupting entire food chains. Eventually, all life on Earth would be extinguished. But rest assured, our hard, barren rock of a planet would continue in its orbit. Oh well.
Your tummy acid can chow down on a razor blade like it's no big deal. Some penguins can totally out-height us humans. And you could potentially turn a jar of peanut butter into a rocking diamond ring to pop the question to your boo. Sounds crazy? Well, it's all true. If you're itching for more facts like these and want to learn why salty crackers are more of a tooth hazard than sugary treats, then stay tuned. Mattresses get heavier over time. As we sleep, our mattresses soak up all our skin oils, sweat, and tears. Yes, I also cry at night. This creates the perfect environment for dust mites, fungi, and bacteria to thrive. Over 5 years, your mattress might collect up to 880 pints of body fluids. Dead skin is another big weight-adding factor too. With 1.5 million skin cells shed hourly, these flakes pile up and become a feast for dust mites. An average used mattress could be home to up to 10 million of these critters. Your spilled coffee makes your mattress heavier too. Foam layers in a mattress trap the liquid and add to its weight. If you know Miss Piggy from the Muppets or Yoda from Star Wars, you'll instantly recognize their unique voices. It's hard to believe they have anything in common, right? Well, Frank Oz spilled the beans in 2021 in his interview. Starting with The Muppet Show and Sesame Street, Frank gave life to characters like Miss Piggy, Cookie Monster, Grover, and more. Then he ventured into the galaxy far, far away to voice Yoda and even came up with the alien's iconic way of speaking. Let's say you decided to move to the healthy side and started munching on carrot sticks instead of your regular, not exactly healthy snacks. Suddenly, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror and realize that your skin has a subtle orange tint. Say what now? Nope, you're not dreaming. All that beta-carotene and orange fruits and veggies can give your skin a temporary glow-up. Don't worry though, just switch up your snacks and the Oompa Loompa look will fade in no time. Some people believe there's no such thing as too much garlic, and they're right. For a fun science experiment, try tasting garlic through your feet. The American Chemical Society claims it's totally possible. Cut a piece of garlic, place it in a bag, put your bare feet inside, and wait. Thanks to a compound called allicin, the garlic will travel through your skin to your mouth and nose. Kids of identical twins share a special bond, being considered both cousins and half-siblings. This unique relationship is due to their genetic similarities. They inherit similar DNA from their identical twin parents. While legally they are cousins, genetically they're more like half-siblings. In fact, they share about 25% of their DNA, double the amount shared by regular cousins. This makes them more genetically related than typical cousins, but not as close as full siblings or identical twins. A man in the US has been surviving on nothing but 20 potatoes a day for 2 months. Chris Voigt from Washington State Potato Commission wanted to show that potatoes aren't just a bunch of carbs, but are actually good for you. You may think that eating spuds alone may make you gain a few extra pounds, but Chris shed some pounds and lowered his cholesterol instead. By the way, in theory, you could even survive eating taters and butter only. Not only are potatoes cool on Earth, but scientists have also made them cool in space. They're the first plants ever grown beyond Earth. In the early 90s, there was an experiment about growing potatoes in space, The study aimed to understand how microgravity conditions affected the growth of potatoes. Potatoes were chosen for their resilience to different climates and ability to thrive in extreme conditions. We need our stomach acid to be super acidic to break down all the variety of foods we eat. It's so strong that it can even dissolve some metals. For example, razor blades dissolve in stomach acid pretty quickly. After 24 hours, they're already 63% gone. Double-edged blades can be broken within 15 hours, while single-edged blades disappear in just 2 hours. Batteries are safe, but pennies don't even get a scratch. Good thing our stomach has a protective layer of mucus and bicarbonate to keep everything in check. The reason we're taller in the morning than at night is the intervertebral discs in our spine. These discs are mostly water, and throughout the day, they get squished down from all the bending and twisting we do. But when we sleep, our spines get a chance to relax, and the discs soak up more fluid, making us a bit taller in the morning. Scientists have found that there are some pretty big gaps between adult brains and teenage brains. One key player in this brain game is the prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain handles important stuff like decision-making and impulse control, but it's not all grown up until you hit your 20s. Adults have their prefrontal cortex in full swing, helping them make smart choices and think things through. Teens, on the other hand, might be more likely to let their emotions guide their decisions. If a cow ever smiles at you, you're gonna be in for a shock. They don't even have upper front teeth. Instead, they have a special dental pad that helps them munch on grass like a pro. When it comes to chewing, cows have it down to a science. They have sharp incisors at the bottom of their mouth for cutting grass and molars at the back for grinding it all up. It all works smoothly, like a quality food processor. Researchers have discovered a penguin species that lived 37 million years ago and would have been as tall as most humans. This giant penguin, also known as the Colossus penguin, stood at a whopping 7 feet tall from toe to beak tip and weighed as much as 250 pounds. To put that in perspective, today's biggest penguin, the emperor penguin, is only 3.6 feet tall and weighs between 50 and 100 pounds. The researchers have also found the longest recorded fused ankle foot bone and parts of a wing bone from this ancient species. With their larger build, these giant penguins were able to dive underwater for longer periods of time, up to 40 minutes, to hunt for fish. Every year, people around the world take about 1.81 trillion photos. That's around 57,000 photos snapped every second, or a whopping 5 billion pics snapped daily. These days, we take more photos every 2 minutes than were taken in the entire 19th century. Cheese! In Singapore, researchers gave cyborg cockroaches a spin in the desert to try them out for search and rescue missions down the road. Turns out, a team of 20 roaches decked out with computer backpacks can actually work together as a swarm. The scientists were able to steer the roaches by sending commands through the backpacks, thanks to a cool new algorithm they came up with. These high-tech bugs could be a real game changer in disaster situations when it comes to sniffing out survivors. What do peanut butter and an engagement ring have in common? Both of them contain diamonds. Scientists have learned how to turn peanut butter into diamonds. They extracted oxygen from CO2, got carbon, and then put it under intense pressure, forming diamonds in the end. Double-stuffed Oreo cookies aren't double-stuffed in fact. A math teacher, Dan Anderson, weighed 10 regular Oreos, 10 double-stuffed Oreos, 10 mega-stuffed Oreos, and 5 wafers. Turns out, double-stuffed Oreos are only 1.86 stuffed Oreos. Next time you ditch your favorite candies because of your fear of cavities, think twice about what you replace those candies with. Crackers are even more harmful for your teeth than sugar. It's not sugar, but acid that decays the teeth enamel. Sticky crackers produce that acid. It's a good environment for bacteria. They're gonna feast in between your teeth. Water is something that just can't go off. How come there are these expiration dates on water bottles then? The expiration date on mineral water doesn't refer to the water. It's about the bottle that can actually get expired. The thing is, over time, it starts leaking some chemicals that aren't quite safe.
So you're on a desert safari, but things don't go as planned. Now you've run out of water in one of the hottest and driest places on the planet. You might think you can get some water from a cactus, but sorry, that's just a myth. In fact, most cactuses have protective chemicals inside them that can make you sick if you try to eat them. There are only a couple of exceptions. The prickly pear and one type of barrel cactus called the fishhook barrel cactus have milder chemicals and could give you some water if you really needed it. Now, if you believe you can escape an alligator if you run in a zigzag, well, I need to disappoint you. This isn't true either. Just run as fast as you can. Alligators rarely chase humans on land. They prefer to ambush their prey in the water, where they are faster and more agile. After all, they can swim at 10 miles per hour. So the chance of an alligator chasing a human on land is very low. This zigzag running advice is more of a joke than a serious survival strategy. Don't believe the myth claiming you can survive a wild animal attack if you pretend to not be alive. Okay, in the animal kingdom, playing dead is a common defense tactic. Some animals even excrete certain odors to enhance the illusion and deter predators. Yet, for humans, that's different. Investigation into 14 different types of animals in North America revealed that, in most situations, it's crucial to stay alert and knowledgeable to be able to take the right actions in time. The next popular, but false, idea is that polar bears hide their noses with their paws while hunting. People think they do it because their black noses are easy to see against the ice, while their fur blends in. However, experts have spent years using telescopes to watch polar bears hunting seals in the Arctic. They've observed them for a long time, even up to 24 hours, and have never seen them cover their noses like that. Unless they have to sneeze. Just joking. Another belief is that running downhill will save you from a bear. This is based on the idea that their shorter front legs struggle to run downhill. In reality, bears are incredibly fast runners, capable of reaching speeds of over 37 miles per hour, and they can sprint downhill just as easily as uphill. So you'll need another strategy. The myth that vehicle headrests are designed to be detachable and sharp to break windows is false. The primary function of a headrest is to prevent neck damage in a crash. Research and documents about the headrest design don't mention any feature for breaking windows. Plus, not all vehicles have removable headrests, and those that are detachable are not necessarily sharp. Touching a baby bird will make its parents abandon it. Actually, birds have a limited sense of smell, so they're unlikely to detect human scent on their babies. This misconception often leads people to leave fledgling birds alone, thinking they're helping. But in reality, these young birds might need assistance. But also, it's common for young birds to leave the nest before they can fly well, and their parents usually to continue to feed them on the ground. If you find a baby bird that has fallen out of its nest, it's best to leave it alone, as the parents are likely nearby and will continue to care for it. The widespread belief that humans use only 10% of their brains is a myth too. Advanced neuroimaging tools like PET scans show that the entire brain is active, even during sleep. These scans reveal continuous activity across the brain, involved in functions such as regulating, interpreting, and acting. This debunks the idea that large parts of the brain remain inactive. The myth that shaving body hair makes it grow back thicker and darker is false. When you shave facial or body hair, it doesn't change its thickness, color, or rate of growth. Shaving just leaves hairs with blunt tips. These newly cut, blunt tips might feel coarser or stubbier as the hair grows out. During this phase, the hair may seem more noticeable and could appear darker or thicker, but this is just a temporary effect, not an actual change in the properties of your body hair. The tall tale that daddy longlegs are the world's most venomous spiders is just a bit of an overstatement. These critters aren't even true spiders. They have been wrongly accused of packing a dangerous venomous punch. In fact, they don't have venom glands at all, and their tiny fangs can't even break human skin. It seems they got their fearsome reputation more from their spindly appearance and as a case of mistaken identity. The belief that everyone in medieval times kicked the bucket in their 30s is way off. Life expectancy is just an average. Back then, a lot of people didn't make it past childhood due to things like rampant infant mortality and risky childbirth. But if you went through those early life hurdles and hit your 20s, you had a decent shot at seeing your 50s or even 70s. Most of our medieval life expectancy data comes from noble dudes, who often ended up as battlefield statistics, skewing the numbers. Soap is often seen as the arch nemesis of cast-iron cookware, but let's bust that myth with a little kitchen science. The fear is that soap will take away the precious seasoning that makes cast-iron pans non-stick and awesome. Modern soaps are much gentler than those old lye-heavy ones that started this whole non-soap on cast-iron rule. Today's soaps won't harm your pan seasoning, especially if it's well established. The old "wait an hour after eating before you swim" rule is more of a misconception than a medical must. The idea was that swimming right after a big meal could lead to cramps, but in reality, it's not a hard rule. Sure, your body diverts blood to your stomach for better digestion, which could, theoretically, leave less for your muscles, increasing the risk of cramps. But for most people, a little light post-snack swimming isn't a recipe for disaster. Bundling up because you think cold weather causes colds? Well, it's not exactly the air that's to blame. It's true that we often start sniffling when the temperature drops, but it's not the cold itself doing the deed. The real culprits are the viruses that cause colds, which just happen to love those lower temperatures. So while chilly weather provides a cozy playground for these germs, catching a cold still requires catching the virus. In other words, it's not the frosty weather, but the frosty weather-loving viruses that you need to watch out for. Oh look, it's that time again when a Facebook privacy hoax makes the rounds, convincing people that a simple copy-paste can magically protect their data. Yes, the classic "I do not give Facebook permission" spiel is back, charming users into thinking this status update is a legally binding shield against privacy breaches. Spoiler alert, it's not. These posts claim that declaring sovereignty over your personal content on your timeline will stop Facebook from using your photos, information, and messages. Facebook's actual policies and user agreements, which everyone agreed to by signing up, still hold the real power. Shaving a double-coated dog is okay? No, it's a big no-no, with some lasting downsides. These dogs have a soft undercoat and a tougher topcoat. Shaving messes up their growth balance, leading to a mismatched and not-so-pretty coat. Plus, there's only a 50-50 chance the double coat will return to its former glory, if at all. Contrary to popular belief, shaving doesn't cool them down. It actually wrecks the coat's natural air circulation system. Other risks include matting, sunburn, and impaired temperature regulation. The coat might never look or feel the same again. Go for a de-shedding treatment. It removes excess undercoat, helps your dog stay cool, and keeps the coat in top shape, all without the drama of a full shave. It's time to look at common misconceptions and myths associated with treating frostbite. Rubbing frostbitten skin cannot help. It can actually worsen the condition and lead to tissue damage. The idea that hot water should be used for rewarming the affected areas is wrong too. Use lukewarm water instead to avoid burns. I have news for you. Rats are ticklish. Well, I thought it was news. Anyway, they have a so-called laugh center in their midbrain, and it activates when someone tickles the animals or when they engage in some fun and playful activities. Scientists discovered this in 2016 after tickling the rodents on their bellies and listening to their squeaky giggles. Now, hummingbirds are the only birds we know about that can fly backward. They mostly do it when they want to move away from flowers. And here's an animal that can't go backward, a kangaroo. They can hop around and cross great distances, but the structure of their strong rear feet and big tails prevent them from walking backwards. Narwhals are those weird creatures that look like some sort of sea unicorns. That horn on their head is not a tusk. It's a giant tooth that sticks out through the upper lip of male narwhals. This tooth is probably one of the tools that plays a role in attracting ladies. Now, flamingos are not actually pink. They're born gray, but throughout their life, they eat lots of algae and other foods that contain a red-orange pigment we know as beta-carotene, like in carrots. This pigment gets broken down and ends up in their skin and feathers, which is what makes them pink. They need to eat a lot of such food to stay like that, though. If we humans wanted to change our skin color, we wouldn't be able to eat enough food rich in beta-carotene to really turn pink, or in our case, maybe even orange. Sloths are really slow. All the jokes and memes about them are true, but they're also very skilled swimmers, and they move in the water around 3 to 4 times quicker than on land. They can do breaststroke just like people, and it's an important skill for them to have because they're tropical animals that mostly live in jungles, and those areas are often flooded. Tigers are the biggest members of the feline family, even bigger than lions. And no tiger has the same set of stripes. Their coat is actually a camouflage that comes in handy when they need to find a good spot where their prey won't see them. Interestingly, their skin is striped too, not just the coat. Their stripes are as unique as our fingerprints. Now, even though they look kind of funny and innocent, you wouldn't want to bother a platypus. These wild animals are some of the few mammal species that can poison you. They have spurs on the tips of their back feet that can release venom. It's not potent enough to pose a life threat, but the sting can still be very painful and can cause swelling and other issues. When a ladybug needs to defend itself against potential predators, it starts bleeding from its knees. Now, it's not actual blood coming out of its joints. It's a certain chemical that smells bad and, therefore, repels predators. They have another mechanism that helps them survive in the harsh animal kingdom, their specific color. Predators really don't like the combinations of bright colors, such as red, orange, and black, because they know that creatures colored this way can taste awful. Roosters can get extremely noisy in the morning, but they don't go deaf because they don't even hear how loud their crowing can be. What keeps them safe is special built-in noise protection plugs. Hens have the same system that reduces the risk of hearing loss too. Not only do they have this protection, but they can also regrow cochlear hair ears if they get damaged in only a couple of days. Owls don't have eyeballs. They have something that's more like eye tubes, and they can't move them back and forth like we do with our eyeballs, which is why these birds have incredibly flexible necks. They're able to rotate their heads 270 degrees. For comparison, humans can only manage 180. That's why owls have a specific system of blood vessels in their heads. It delivers fresh blood to the brain if the bird turns its head too quickly and cuts off circulation. Just keep swimming. You may remember how Dory the Blue Tang sang this in Finding Nemo. Dory wasn't a shark, but that's a message some shark species need to take literally. Mako sharks, great whites, whale sharks, and some other kinds need to keep swimming. Otherwise, they'll stop breathing. We use our lungs for breathing, and some sharks use a method called buccal pumping. This means they swim with their mouths open. That way, they allow water to flow through their gills and thus extract oxygen. The most dangerous animal on our planet isn't a bear, a shark, or some toothy tiger. It's something way smaller, the mosquito. Not only is it extremely irritating, but it also transfers serious diseases such as yellow fever, malaria, or dengue fever. Annually, hundreds of thousands of people don't survive the battle with those diseases. Mosquitoes also outnumber every other creature across the globe, apart from termites and ants. Grizzly bears are incredibly strong animals with a bite powerful enough to crush a bowling ball. That's why you won't see them allowed in bowling alleys. Despite that, they're mostly light eaters. They're strong enough to make a meal out of whatever they come across, including a bison, moose, or elk. but they still like to munch on their fruits, nuts, berries, and even a small unfortunate mouse that gets lost and ends up in the predator's mouth. The inland taipan is the most venomous snake on the planet. We know it as the western taipan. It lives in Australia. Just one bite has enough venom to turn out fatal for at least 100 fully grown humans. And it can also do the job within only half an hour if you don't have anything to treat the bite right away. They say these snakes are mostly shy and they mind their own business. But like other animals, they will attack if they feel threatened or provoked. There's a kind of turtle that can stay alive for months under the ice by breathing through its behind. When it gets colder, some animals can't find safe places to stay, so they must survive harsh winter conditions wherever they are. And while bees get cozy in their nests and bears sleep in caves, painted turtles stay in their ponds that freeze over. Since the ice limits their access to air, they extract oxygen directly from the water and breathe through their behinds. Yes, that would be handy. It's well known that ravens are incredibly intelligent animals. They're excellent at solving problems, but it seems they also have impressive social intelligence. They're very in tune with their feelings as well as the emotions of their mates. If one raven in the group feels pessimistic, it's likely to bring the others down too. A real buzzkill. When they see a bird that doesn't like certain food and expresses it in a very vivid way, they lose interest in their own food as well. The pistol shrimp is one of the loudest animals in the world, even though it's tiny, only about 3/4 of an inch long. When it senses food, it opens its large claw that can grow as long as half its body length and lets some water in. Then it snaps the claw shut extremely fast, which shoots out a very strong jet of bubbles. These bubbles can stun or even finish the prey the shrimp is trying to catch. And when the bubbles pop, it produces a snapping sound, louder than anyone would expect. Crocodiles are even scarier than we thought, because many of them can gallop like horses. They probably inherited this ability from their ancient ancestors, who were as small as cats, had long legs, and could run at speeds of about 11 miles per hour. Smaller crocodiles probably gallop when something's after them, but caimans and alligators obviously don't need to use this skill. It's you who's more likely to gallop away when you see them.
Do you hear a sound and almost instantly see a specific color? You may be part of a special group of people, about 4% of the world's population, who can experience synesthesia. You're not imagining things. A new study shows that synesthesia is real, and it has brain scans to prove it. When these synesthetic people hear colors, scans show their brain parts for sight and sound are speaking to each other. Since synesthesia seems to be genetic, some researchers picked 3 families where this feature was present. They went on to play with DNA sequencing, comparing the genes of family members with synesthesia to those without. They still don't have the complete picture of this unique feature, but they did manage to narrow it down to some 37 possible gene suspects. Sometimes, after a nap in an uncomfortable position, you might have felt your arm or leg all tingly or numb. You'd think it all has to do with poor blood circulation. In fact, it might be due to a little thing called paresthesia. This is when your body starts experiencing unusual sensations because your nerves are squeezed or irritated. Paresthesia can give you anything from a burning sensation to that annoying feeling like your arm or leg is not responding at all. It might even throw in some itching or the good old pins and needles. Usually, it shouldn't take longer than 30 minutes tops. Give the affected body part a good shake and it might speed up the process. If it takes longer than that, or if you're getting repeated episodes of paresthesia for no reason, best to check with a specialist to make sure everything's okay. You know what's also worth checking? If you've already liked this video and subscribed to the channel, just to make sure you'll never miss anything. On a regular day, you don't even think about your stomach or its chemical content. Can you imagine if one day this substance just vanished? It contains hydrochloric acid, which is also used in fertilizers, rubber, and steel. Should you ever inhale it, you'd get some serious nose and breathing trouble. Whenever you're chewing something, your stomach starts working those gastric juices. They help because they can help break down protein, activate pepsin, get rid of whatever bacteria you may have swallowed without even knowing, and signal your food to move on towards the exit. Without the acid, the food would just sit there, turning into a bacterium breeding ground. Proteins and nutrients won't get absorbed. Your lunch or dinner might rush through your system as is, and you could end up eliminating undigested food. Ugh. There's a reason why paper cuts hurt so much. For starters, they happen on your fingertips, which are very sensitive areas. That's because they're full of receptors, which are like your body's receptionists, helping you determine the size, shape, texture, and temperature of the things you touch. When you get a paper cut, these receptors get instantly triggered, sending unpleasant information to the brain. Paper cuts also aren't like a clean slice from a sharp knife because of the dullness of the paper edges. This exposes even more of those receptors. Paper cuts don't bleed much, and they don't clot well either. It leaves the nerves out in the open, making the discomfort even worse. We're always using our hands, so these cuts keep reopening, taking forever to heal. Paper is often treated with chemicals that can irritate your skin too. Déjà vu seems to just hit you out of nowhere. You're not a sorcerer, and you're also not communicating with anyone from the beyond. It's just your brain malfunctioning. According to doctors, déjà vu is experienced when two parts of the brain are having a bit of a misunderstanding. These two brain parts are located on each side of your skull, right above your temples. They're like the memory cards of your brain, helping you remember things like locations or other people's faces. They even decode emotions and understand language. Now, in each of these brain areas called temporal lobes, there's a region called the hippocampus. This one is responsible for short-term memories. Sometimes the brain can get small glitches, confusing the hippocampus. That's when we get déjà vu. All this process messes with your recognition memory systems, giving you that weird feeling that you've been there before, or you've already met a person you're seeing for the first time. This is a completely normal process, and you're more likely to experience déjà vu if you're between 15 and 25 years old. It also seems that people who travel a lot or have the ability to remember their dreams experience it more often. It's hard to imagine if a whole civilization could survive without anyone having sight. That's highly unlikely, and here's why. First, imagine trying to grow food when you can't even see what you're doing. Prepping the soil would turn into a nightmare, because without sight, we'd be lost in, say, a massive wheat field with no reference points. Gathering that little food wouldn't be easy either. Animals might be lurking everywhere, ready to harm us. Communication would be complicated, since we wouldn't be able to read something without touching. Even our social lives would be different. Without eyes, we'd be left to rely on voices. Talking to someone without knowing who else is listening. Creepy. If you've ever had a spicy pepper, you know it's not technically hot in terms of its temperature. So why does it feel like it's burning, even if it's just out of the fridge? Well, spicy food has these chemicals that trick your body into turning up its internal air conditioning. First, your lips and tongue feel like they're on fire. Then your nose starts to feel all runny, and you might even shed a tear or two. Your blood vessels dilate, and suddenly, your entire body temperature goes up. To cool things down, you start to sweat. Your lungs might participate as well and signal your diaphragm to pitch in some hiccups, all in an attempt to kick out the fiery intruder. In most cases, all these bodily triggers are caused by a substance called capsaicin. often found in hot peppers like habanero and cayenne. Even though we might feel like we're moving around in our dreams, we aren't because of a complex system in our bodies. This keeps your muscles from doing all sorts of outrageous things because of the wild stories our brains might be coming up with at night. It turns out that most of this brain chemistry happens during the rapid eye movement, or REM phase, about 90 minutes after you've fallen asleep. During REM, or REM, your brain is experiencing some of the weirdest dreams, while your voluntary muscles, like your arms and legs, are turned off. This muscle lockdown is the reason why some people wake up and can't move, experiencing what they call sleep paralysis. The big mystery was how the muscles got into this paralyzed state. Early on, scientists thought glycine, a neurotransmitter, was responsible. Research has shown that even if scientists blocked glycine, the muscles remained frozen. It took a while longer for scientists to find out that to keep those muscles immobile, you need both glycine and another communication chemical called GABA, or GABA. We're not as hairy as our ancestors, but we do still get little goosebumps when we're cold. It's because of these tiny muscles in our hair follicles, called erector pili, that pull our hair upright. For furry animals, this creature helps keep them warm. But for us, it doesn't do much in terms of heat. Still, we and some other less hairy creatures kept this ability over the years. Experiments were done to figure out more about these goosebumps. They found these three key players: those erector pili muscles, sympathetic nerves, and hair follicles. When they played around with the nerves, hair growth slowed down. The nerves and our hair follicles work like partners, making chemical synapses. So, goosebumps aren't just a quick fix to lower temperatures. They might also tell our stem cells to grow more hair in the long run. That's why losing those muscle cells could be linked to going bald. Bet you've never heard of corrugation. It's a system that may lie hidden in your pantry right now. Ever notice those bumps on food cans? That's exactly what they're called. And they're not just for aesthetics. First off, they make the can extra strong. That's because they can help it from cracking during the manufacturing process. Plus, these corrugations come in handy during delivery, acting like a shield to make sure there's no spillage. They're also useful in the long run because they help keep the cans in their original shape. Even when things get too hot or too cold, these corrugations let them breathe a bit. They expand and contract without breaking the metal. You may not notice any cracks on regular cans, but even the tiniest of openings can leave a way for nasty bacteria to get in contact with the food. Not to mention, they create this little air gap, so when you pop the can open, everything slides out smoothly, without you having to put in that much effort. You know what also doesn't require much effort? Hitting that subscribe button and liking this video. You know there's a plant out there that's so eager to reach the sun, you can hear it grow? Rhubarb, just before it's picked from the fields, soaks up all the sun rays it can get to make glucose. After this sunbathing session, it gets transported to dark sheds. Inside, it keeps on growing and uses the stored glucose as fuel. Nothing out of the ordinary so far. But in that dark, cozy, and warm place, rhubarb starts acting weird. That environment pushes the plant to stretch itself out in hopes it will find sun rays again. It happens so fast that you can actually hear the buds and stalks making noise as they pop open. To make sure this process goes smoothly, there's no light allowed. If light hits the rhubarb at this point, it will start photosynthesizing again and go bitter. Speaking of everyday groceries, you might have noticed that veggie bags come with some green stripes. Know that it's a sneaky optical trick. Those stripes fool our eyes into believing the veggies look way greener than they are. And it's not just veggies that get this special packaging. Oranges are often sold in red mesh bags for the same reason. Lemons? They go for yellow or green bags for that same pop of color. If your cooking skills aren't that good and you're just afraid you're going to mess up dinner yet again, stick to mushrooms. That's because they're almost impossible to overcook. Unlike other vegetables that turn into mush when overcooked, mushrooms are way more resistant. They've got this interesting substance called chitin, a molecular structure that works like an armor. So you can cook them forever. They won't burn. Donuts don't have holes in them because it's easier for you to pick them up. If you've ever tried to make them at home, you might have noticed that when you fry the dough, the outside gets done quickly, thanks to the hot oil. If you want the inside to look just as good, you have to keep it in the oil way longer, but then the outside would get too brown. Thanks to that middle hole, the heat gets to both sides equally, cooking up a flawless donut. Here's how that small piece of paper makes it into your fortune cookie. First, they bake these cookies flat, like pancakes. Then, while they're still warm and bendy, they sneak in those tiny messages. As the cookies cool down, they toughen up and keep their shape, trapping the fortune inside like a tasty time capsule. One legend has it that these Asian treats were initially intended to help people send all sorts of secret messages without causing any suspicion. Here's a little tip for whenever you're buying lunch at a fast food place. Skip the word extra when you're ordering. The moment you speak that term, you're tempting the employees to charge more. Instead, go for something like, "A little more, please," when you're getting a special burrito bowl. According to a UK study, cheese is the most stolen of foods worldwide. It's estimated that around 4% of all cheese just vanishes from stores. And no, it's not mice doing the stealing, it's people. Why? Because cheese is becoming more and more valuable. The price of cheese is constantly going up, and sneaky thieves are trying to make easy money by simply taking it from the racks. It's not just cheese, though. Other interesting items on the thieving list include fresh meat, chocolate, and seafood. Ferrero, the company behind those luscious jars of Nutella, needs about 25% of the world's hazelnuts every year. So if you think about it, 1 in 4 hazelnuts ends up in a chocolatey jar. The manufacturers get the nuts from Turkey, Italy, and Chile, making sure they get them delivered from both the northern and southern hemispheres to keep things fresh. Nutella's impact on the economy is even bigger than you'd imagine. Because of this demand, the price of hazelnuts went through the roof. In 2014, a frost hit Turkey's hazelnuts, supply got halved, and prices were even higher. Now, even places like New Jersey are trying to grow those Nutella-worthy nuts. When you imagine someone trying to sneak something into space, your first thought wouldn't be a sandwich. But back in 1965, during a Gemini mission, astronaut John Young brought a corned beef sandwich on board, going against NASA rules. He hid it in his spacesuit pocket before blastoff. About 2 hours into the 5-hour trip, he went to the mission commander and offered him this unlawful treat. The commander, being a good sport, took it, and they shared a quick, savory moment. He even put the unfinished sandwich in his own spacesuit pocket to avoid crumbs making a mess of the spacecraft. Meanwhile, the official NASA-approved food was waiting patiently in a box nearby. Surely, radishes aren't your first pick when it comes to salad ingredients, but they have quite an interesting history too. These mustard, broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower cousins have been grown and eaten for longer than you'd imagine, even before the Romans were famous in ancient Egyptian times. In fact, radishes were used as currency for the people who built the pyramids, alongside onions and garlic. You'd think the English are champions when it comes to drinking tea, but you'd be wrong. Turkey is in fact the tea capital of the world. Every Turk drinks an average of 1,300 cups of tea each year. On a regular day, they're sipping on 3 to 5 cups, but when winter hits, they can reach 10 cups a day. Locals claim tea is like a social custom for them. It's more than just a hot beverage. It's an excuse to sit down, enjoy the atmosphere, and connect with loved ones. When it comes to types, black tea is preferred. There might be a magical drink hidden in your fridge. It's tonic water, and it might be able to glow in the dark. If you're curious, test it out with some ultraviolet light. The secret behind this glow is pretty simple. Tonic water has quinine, a chemical that lights up under certain conditions. Quinine was used back in the day to treat certain health problems. The stuff was so bitter that some people started mixing it with sugar and soda water. In simple terms, things glow because they absorb light energy, gets all excited, and then releases it as visible light. Quinine in tonic water absorbs and releases energy, making your drink look like it's from a fairy tale. There's an interesting connection between what we hear and what we taste. Scientists investigated and found that people worldwide link certain sounds with specific flavors, and they call it cross-modal correspondence. High-pitched sounds match up with sweet and sour tastes, while the lower, jarring sounds go hand in hand with bitterness. If it's staccato, think crunchy, and if it's smooth and flowing, think creamy. Some even found music that can enhance the taste of chocolate. In this study, when people listened to a high-pitched, sweet soundtrack while eating chocolate, they thought it was sweeter than when they'd heard a lower, more dissonant soundtrack. Are humans the only creatures on Earth that enjoy eating spicy food? Probably. I mean, it's not like you've ever seen a giraffe ordering a curry takeout at your local restaurant. Well, that might not be completely true. It turns out that tree shrews, these adorable little critters, have a burning passion for spicy food too. Asian researchers stumbled upon this fascinating fact. Tree shrews are the only non-human mammals who intentionally seek out mouth-numbing, tongue-tingling, tear-inducing spicy delicacies. Scientists detected a sneaky genetic mutation in these courageous tree shrews. They feature a certain receptor that is responsible for detecting pain caused by the scorching sensation of capsaicin, the infamous hot chemical found in chili peppers. It's like having a secret superpower that shields them from feeling as much discomfort as the rest of us mere mortals. But how did scientists come to this astonishing revelation? They decided to venture into the wild and looked at 5 wild tree shrews and a group of 6 wild mice, acting as the control group for the test. The team then took notes on how each of these tiny mammals reacted to the fiery capsaicin. No surprises when it came to the mice. They really didn't have a good time. But the tree shrews remained remarkably calm and collected. The secret behind the tree shrews' spice resilience was a single amino acid that sets them apart from their mouse counterparts. While many plants have evolved to deter animals from munching on them by producing pungent chemicals, the tree shrews have managed to outsmart Mother Nature. The scientists behind this study believe that the genetic mutation responsible for the shrew's spice tolerance is an incredible evolutionary adaptation. It allowed them to expand their culinary horizons and survive in diverse environments. For us humans, though, spices aren't a modern discovery. Even back in prehistoric Denmark, our ancestors had a spicy side. Researchers found some ancient pots that were used for cooking around 6,000 years ago. And guess what? They found traces of a peppery, mustard-like flavor. Now, when exactly did humans start seasoning their food? That's a bit of a mystery. Take coriander seeds, for instance, which are heavily featured in many Asian, Middle Eastern, and Mediterranean dishes. They were found at a site in Asia dating back a whopping 23,000 years. Unfortunately, we can't be absolutely sure if they were indeed used to add flavor to food. They might have been just growing there randomly. However, solid evidence has been uncovered that confirms people in Northern Europe were intentionally spicing up their food around 6,100 years ago. This is the earliest known record of spiced food in Europe, and possibly the world. To get this spicy scoop, the researchers examined the leftovers stuck inside 74 cooking pots from ancient sites in Denmark and Germany. These pots had all the chemical signatures of meat or fish, and they even found phytoliths, which are little mineral traces left by food. These phytoliths were similar to the ones found in garlic mustard seeds, a local plant known for its zesty kick, but not much nutritional value. Here's where it gets interesting. There were way more phytoliths in the pot residue than in the surrounding sediment. That means those clever people intentionally brought the garlic mustard from elsewhere and tossed it into the pots. What's even more amazing is that these pots predate the arrival of agriculture in the region. So we're talking about good old hunter-gatherers here. Now, let's ponder this spicy conundrum. Why are humans so obsessed with adding a kick to their cuisine? We've got a couple of theories brewing. One is that even the Neanderthals used plants for their medicinal properties, and the garlic mustard seems to have been used as a disinfectant back in the day. So maybe our ancestors had a knack for combining flavor and health benefits. Another idea suggests that humans started seasoning their food because some spices have antimicrobial properties that protect against food spoilage. In other words, our taste buds might have evolved to love the spice for a good reason. It kept us safe. Others prefer to keep things simple and believe there might not be a functional reason behind our love for spice. It may all come down to the joy of taste. Next time you add a dash of chili to your meal, remember that you're continuing a tradition that goes back thousands of years. Have you ever wondered why spicy food feels like it's setting your taste buds on fire? It's because spicy food contains that mischievous little compound called capsaicin. When you take a bite of that fiery dish, capsaicin latches onto the specific receptors inside your mouth. Now, these receptors weren't initially meant to detect capsaicin at all. They evolved to sense heat, acting like the mouth's own heat detectors, keeping us from munching on foods that could cause harm. But here's the funny part. Capsaicin and VR1 receptors ended up in this relationship by accident. When capsaicin waltzes into the picture and triggers those VR1 receptors, our brain gets a signal that shouts, "Hot alert!" And that's why we perceive spicy food as hot, even though, technically, it doesn't have a high temperature. It's just our brains being tricked into thinking we're eating something that could burn us. Although spicy food doesn't actually burn, our brain falls for the trick and believes we're in some sort of discomfort. So why do we keep going back for more? Scientists have been scratching their heads over this curious phenomenon and uncovered a fascinating explanation tied to our brain's pain relief system. You see, when our brains think we're hurt, it releases endorphins for us to get better as soon as possible. These endorphins not only dull the bad sensation, but also shower us with a nice feeling. It's no wonder we adore spicy food. The spicy saga goes even further. Scientists have been delving into capsaicin's potential beyond the realm of taste buds. They've been exploring its abilities to provide relief and have stumbled upon some intriguing findings. Throughout history and across various cultures, capsaicin has been used to tackle an array of ailments. From fever to different types of aches, capsaicin has made its mark. In certain communities in Peru, they burn leaves containing capsaicin to produce steam, which helps alleviate headaches. In the Dominican Republic, these leaves are ingested as a form of treatment, and in the Philippines, capsaicin-rich fruits are sought after to treat people's joints. Now, you might assume that the spiciness of peppers, for instance, is a clear message from Mother Nature screaming, "Don't eat me, silly human!" That's exactly what scientists initially believed. They thought that pepper plants evolved their fiery flavors to keep us mammals from gobbling up their fruits. However, Recent research on wild peppers suggests that deterring big mammals like us is actually just a side gig. The real reason behind their heat is likely their way of defending against much smaller threats. Nasty insects and pesky mold. Back in the 1890s, scientists proposed the direct deterrent hypothesis to explain why peppers evolved to be spicy. According to this theory, peppers wanted to make sure their fruits were feasted upon by birds, not by clumsy creatures like us. You see, birds' heat-sensing nerves are blissfully immune to capsaicin's fiery charms, making them the perfect seed dispersers. The direct deterrent hypothesis took a hit when scientists looked at the natural variation in pepper spiciness. It turns out that the heat levels of pepper species tend to vary, probably because producing capsaicin isn't easy. So if these peppers can get away with being mild, they stop producing the spicy stuff altogether. When scientists ventured into pepper-packed landscapes where both mild and hot peppers grow, they made an intriguing discovery. Mammals, even when faced with milder peppers, don't really fancy eating them. Also, peppers don't crank up the spice levels just because there are more animals around. It's like they're saying, "Hey mammals, you're not the main concern here." Instead, the spiciness of peppers seems to be closely tied to the local climate. Spicier peppers tend to thrive in areas with more rainfall. Why? Because of fungal damage. That's right. Fungi wreak havoc on our beloved peppers. It turns out that mold, not mammals, might be the true reason behind spiciness.
Ah, the toothpick. This seemingly ordinary item that you often use after devouring a burger has a secret history that'll make your jaw drop. Pun intended. Don't be fooled by its slim appearance. The toothpick has been around for ages. Long before archaeologists could dig up physical evidence of ancient toothpicks, those toothy wonders were made from materials that fell apart faster than leftovers in the back of your fridge. Yep, I'm talking about wood. However, clever researchers have found hints that Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens were hardcore toothpick enthusiasts. They've studied prehistoric bones and deduced that our ancestors regularly used some sort of tool to keep their pearly whites clean. In fact, they even found scratch marks on a tooth that suggest our predecessors were serious toothpickers. In hindsight, it probably wasn't the best idea for the delicate enamel coating of human teeth. Fast forward to more recent times, but still ancient, mind you, and toothpicks were all the rage among various ancient civilizations. Literary sources have spilled the beans on this peculiar obsession. According to an ancient Greek historian, a local tyrant met his doom by using a poison-coated toothpick. Yikes! And guess what? Toothpicks from those times have survived the test of time for us to see even today. These fancy picks were often made from more durable materials, like bone or precious metals. Who knew a tiny stick could be so dangerous and luxurious at the same time? Now let's talk about toothpick fashion. Oh yes, it was a thing too. Even during the medieval period when life was all castles and chivalry, folks flaunted their upper-class status with gold or silver toothpicks elegantly tucked away in snazzy cases. Europeans really knew how to stand out from the toothpick-wielding masses. One particular fancy toothpick dating from the 16th century is displayed at the British Museum. It's made with gold and even encrusted with pearls. The trend continued well into the 19th century, when the Duchess of Parma even had a whole dozen of valuable toothpicks as part of her dowry. At one point in history, some crafty ladies in Portugal came up with a toothpick innovation. Instead of using them to clean teeth, these brilliant women made disposable toothpicks, specifically for picking up sticky sweets. Bye-bye, messy fingers. And as luck would have it, toothpick production in Portugal boomed. Those toothpicks were a hit, finding their way across Europe and the Americas. An American entrepreneur named Charles Forster found himself fascinated by those same toothpicks he encountered during his travels. He was amazed by the exceptional quality of those little wooden wonders. Inspired, Charles Forster hatched a wild plan in his mind. He set out to build a contraption that could produce toothpicks at an astonishing rate, millions upon millions of them in a single day. He was determined to bring toothpick prosperity to America. But alas, fate had a quirky sense of humor. When Forster unveiled his toothpick wonderland to the American people, they just weren't interested. It seemed they were quite content with whittling their own toothpicks. Not to mention the idea of spending money on something they could easily make themselves left them scratching their heads. Forster knew he needed a magical transformation to create demand and ignite the toothpick frenzy. So, this daring entrepreneur decided to unleash his arsenal of marketing tactics. He hired people to masquerade as toothpick-hungry customers in stores, causing a toothpick-buying need among the unsuspecting shoppers. But that wasn't enough. He even recruited the brightest minds from Harvard University and gave them a secret mission. Whenever they ate at restaurants, they had to ask for toothpicks. Like magic, the habit spread, and soon enough, toothpicks became the must-have accessory for anyone. While Forster was busy masterminding the toothpick revolution, there were a few others who wanted a slice of the toothpick pie. In 1869, a quirky fellow from Philadelphia snagged a patent for his toothpick invention. It had a fancy hooked end and a spoon-like mechanism, perfect for cleaning out hollow and sensitive teeth. There were others who sought to improve the toothpick experience even further. One clever inventor dreamed up a retractable toothpick case for the suave and stylish toothpick enthusiast. And oh, there was a scented coating invented, designed to make your breath smell fresher than a field of daisies on a spring morning. As time marched on, the toothpick empire grew to epic proportions. By the end of the 19th century, billions of toothpicks were being produced each year. In 1887 alone, the count soared to an unimaginable 5 billion toothpicks, with our toothpick hero Charles Forster responsible for more than half of them. And just when you thought the toothpick madness couldn't get any crazier, there was a factory in Maine that emerged, defying all toothpick limits. It churned out toothpicks by the billions. Back to current times, it seems like luxurious toothpicks are ready to make a grand comeback. Leading the charge is a cheeky Toronto-based company that's on a mission to revolutionize the toothpick game. Now, you might be wondering, toothpicks? Really? How can they be luxurious these days? Well, these people have set their focus on crafting exquisite toothpicks from white birch and offer them in 6 delightful flavors. And believe it or not, there's something about toothpicks that taps into our primal instincts. Maybe it's because our ancestors were big fans of toothpick hygiene, and that trait has stuck with us through the ages. Everything about these toothpicks is in luxury and style. Imagine a slender bottle, sealed with a cork and elegantly embossed with the company's name. And that's not all. Each toothpick has one charred end, adding a touch of mystique. To take it up a notch, the company even offers chic leather carrying cases. Style and pizzazz aside, some dental experts claim using a toothpick may not always be good for us. If you find yourself in a sticky situation with something lodged between your teeth and you have absolutely nothing else on hand, you can cautiously consider using a toothpick. But hey, don't make it a habit. Dental professionals strongly advise against prolonged toothpick use. Why, might you ask? First off, breakage. As you're merrily picking away at your teeth, the little object might suddenly snap. You might even get a little piece stuck in there, which beats the whole initial purpose, right? Hygiene is another thing you consider. If you didn't buy that toothpick yourself, you can't guarantee its quality. It's hard to know if it's been stored properly, or if it hasn't come in contact with harmful elements for our smile. A fantastic alternative is, of course, dental floss. It's the best way to give those food particles the old goodbye from your chompers. It can reach those tricky nooks and crannies without causing any gum damage or pesky irritations. But alas, if you already have a bunch of toothpicks at home and don't necessarily want them to go to waste, there are many other projects you can use them for at home. For starters, you can use them in your garden. Toothpick barriers can shield your delicate plants and seedlings from creepy crawlies. Watch your plants grow tall and strong, safe from sneaky caterpillars. And if a plant has a little accident, don't worry. Toothpicks to the rescue for broken branches and injured leaves. These little objects are also the ultimate ninja cleaners. Dust and dirt hiding in hard-to-reach spots won't cause trouble anymore. You can use them to clean grime around remote control buttons, phone buttons, and toys. They can also be used to clean up buildup in your hairbrushes and shower heads too. Ready to join the toothpick tradition passed down from generations? Well, it's called the testing for doneness. Grab a toothpick and poke it into freshly baked cakes, loaves of bread, or brownies. If there's still any batter left over on the toothpick once you pull it out, your dessert might not be done quite yet.
Did you know that chickens can jump and fly too? Domestication of the chicken dates back to at least 2000 BCE. They do have the required feathers and muscles to fly, but they don't do it much anymore hundreds of years after they were domesticated. But if you give them the right motivation, they can do that. If they think the other side of the fence is cool, they can jump up to 6 feet. Some hens hop on the trees to roost. Picture a tree with a couple of chickens on it. Looks so funny. Their motivation is safety. The tree serves as a cover for them in the daytime and protects them from winged predators. Similarly, at night, the tree turns into a shelter from wind and rain and the possible attacks from ground predators. This doesn't have to be in the wild. Farms where chickens can wander around freely also have tree nests. Some sneaky chickens leave their coop and jump onto the trees. So, many chicken owners search for ways to keep them under control. Hey Siri, search for how to deal with jumping chickens? I'm now moving on to everyday items and the secrets they held. The twist ties and plastic bags on bread packs don't have random colors. They are color-coded based on the daily bread baked. Each day of the week has an assigned color. For example, blue twist tie stands for Monday, green for Tuesday, and red for Thursday. Now you can figure out how fresh your bread is. Color codes are helpful for employees too. They can easily spot the old loaves on the shelves. There's a popular saying, "You are what you eat." It turns out that our guts are also there to make us happy. Serotonin is the feel-good hormone. It's also a neurotransmitter. Many of us immediately associate it with our brains. Yet, interestingly, around 95% of the body's serotonin is produced in our digestive tract. Many of us often use the words herbs and spices interchangeably, but these are different seasonings. Spices come from every part of a plant or tree, like root, seed, or bark. But herbs are the plant's leaves. We generally add spice to food in roasting and during cooking. Herbs release their aroma faster, so we add them at the very end. Do you ever feel you've been watched and discovered that you're right? Well, that spider sense-like feeling is called gaze detection. Your brain senses when someone is staring at you. Research explains this as a sort of defense mechanism. A direct gaze can be a symbol of dominance, and that can be a potential threat. Humans evolved with this feeling in time. Strangely, it works when the person looks right at you. If their gaze is off just a few degrees to the left or right of you, your brain won't react this way. What about the urge to rewatch your favorite movies or listen to your songs over and over? You're not alone. This habit has some benefits for your mental health. This behavior eases your mind. When people feel overwhelmed, they'll have less self-control and be less motivated to complete hard tasks. You are drawn into The Office's first season again because when you watch, listen, or do something familiar, you don't have to spend the effort to monitor what you're thinking. So, it's a good way to have a quick mental reset. Here's another feeling. Imagine you're enjoying the sunset on a terrace or at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Out of nowhere, your inner voice whispers, "What if I jump?" This isn't coming from a darker state. You know, it's just sort of a feeling that appears when you're high up. There is a name for this. The call of the void, or the high place phenomenon, is a relatively new research topic, but more studies are on the way. Jim Carrey's great performance in The Truman Show is surely remembered. Did you know that the Truman Show delusion is an actual thing? The phenomenon is an issue related to cognitive neuropsychiatry. People with this delusion believe that they're being filmed and that the footage will be broadcasted for entertainment. There was a time when aluminum was more precious than gold. I know, it's hard to believe. We now wrap our sandwiches on this everyday item. If we go back to the 19th century, we would see aluminum as a hard-to-get element because it was literally hard to obtain until innovators found a way to extract it on large industrial scales. Then, the reign of aluminum was over. There are stories about the French ruler Napoleon III having an aluminum cutlery set that he served food to his special guests. We might as well talk about a time traveler's party held in 2009. The theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking invited time travelers to hang out. There was a huge banner hung up with the words, "Welcome, time travelers." No one showed up, but maybe travelers had prior engagements, and that's why they didn't attend the party. I swear I'm not crying because no one showed up to that awesome party. I was just cutting an onion. Why do we burst into tears when we chop onions? Because of a particular enzyme. Is there a solution? Next time, get some damp paper towel and put it on the cutting board next to the onion. The acidity that comes from the enzyme will go towards the wet paper instead of your eyes. The ancient Egyptian civil calendar was quite similar to the one we use now. They had 365 days divided into 12 months. But instead of spreading a 31st to some months, they would add those extra days to the end of the year. Now, let's turn our cameras to the animal kingdom again. Is there a benefit for zebras to have their fascinating pattern? Scientists asked this question too and experimented. They dressed up horses with zebra look-alike coats. The coat was covering the whole body of the horses but their heads. It turns out that zebra patterns repel flies. Scientists observed that flies only go for the heads of the animals and stay away from the horse bodies. Ants are known as hard-working animals, even in the tails. That's got a legit reflection in real life. They can carry up to 20 times more weight than their own body weight. These insects have other noble qualities too. If an ant gets seriously injured, it'll refuse treatment from the colony's paramedic ant. The ant knows that it can't make it, so instead of wasting the colony's resources, this ant forces the paramedic ant to carry on without it. Camels can survive around 15 days without drinking water. Many people assume that they store water in their humps. No, humps are for food storage in the form of fat. The water is kept in their bloodstream. Speaking of camels, in some countries, there's a tradition to hold camel beauty contests. For instance, a contest was held in the 2022 World Cup in Qatar as an attraction. You see a giant housefly in the house, but it flees from your ninja's hands. You might think that nature will take care of it in a couple of days, but actually, houseflies can live for about a month or two. The next fact is about an emergency on the road. Detachable car headrests can be used as an escape tool. You can break the window with the headrests if you can't leave the car by the doors. You should wedge the headrest between the glass and the windowsill. Aim a corner. Then, you hit the headrest as hard as you can to break the glass safely. You might have to hit a couple of times, but it eventually shatters. Don't give up after one try. Don't be shy. Share your wow facts with us.
I bet you're dreaming of traveling deep into space, but I'm just as sure you don't know even half of all those amazing things that are happening in our home solar system. Like ice-spewing volcanoes on Pluto, a potential giant planet lurking on the outskirts of our solar system beyond Neptune, or a giant canyon the size of the United States on Mars. Let's have a look. First of all, let's travel closer to our Sun and see how insanely massive it is. Want some proof? Well, 99.86% of all the mass of the solar system is the mass of the Sun. In particular, hydrogen and helium it's made of. The remaining 0.14% is mostly the mass of the solar system's 8 planets. I live on one of those. Oh, and even though you might not have noticed it, we live inside the Sun. Wait, I didn't mean we're the inhabitants of the red-hot ball of light approximately 93 million miles away. No. The fact is that the Sun's atmosphere stretches far beyond its visible surface, and our planet is right within its reach. In fact, it's the gusts of solar winds from the Sun which create such breathtaking phenomenon as the northern and southern lights. Oh, and while speaking of the solar system, you must know that it's a whopping 4.6 billion years old. Scientists came to this conclusion after they studied the oldest material they could get. I mean, meteorites, of course. The solar system is also breathtakingly vast. You'd have to travel 11 billion miles away from Earth before leaving it. Wow, just think of the frequent flyer miles you'd get. Uranus rotates on its side, and astronomers have no idea how the planet chose such an unusual position. The culprits could be ancient mega-powerful collisions, but so far, it's just a theory. By the way, Uranus is the only planet sitting on its side. Its equator is nearly at a right angle to its orbit. The ocean on Jupiter is larger than any other on the rest of the solar system's planets. But wait, it's not the ocean you think about. The one on Jupiter isn't made of water. It contains metallic hydrogen, and its depth is a staggering 25,000 miles. This is actually almost the same as the circumference of Earth. Volcanoes on Earth are different from those on Pluto, like fire and ice. And I mean it literally. While we have scorching hot lava spilling volcanoes on our planet, volcanoes on Pluto spit ice. When frozen, water expands, and this enormous pressure builds up until one day, bang, the ice erupts. In the process, a new cryovolcano is formed. By the way, as you may remember, Pluto used to be a planet, but this title was taken away in 2006 by some astronomical bureaucrats. Later, Pluto was reclassified as a dwarf planet. But the most unexpected fact about this space body is that its diameter is smaller than that of the US. See for yourself. The greatest distance across the country, from Maine to Northern California, is about 2,700 miles. As for Pluto, it's only 1,470 miles across. Now, even if you're a tiny celestial body, you can still have a moon of your own. In 1993, the Galileo probe was traveling past a miniature asteroid that was no more than 20 miles across. Imagine astronomers' surprise when it discovered that the little thing had a 1-mile-wide moon. Since then, scientists have found tons of moons orbiting minor planets of our solar system. Jupiter's moon, Io, exists in eternal chaos due to hundreds of smoking volcanoes on its surface. If you decided to visit this place, you'd see the smoke from these volcanoes billowing up high into Io's atmosphere. At any given moment, here on Earth, you can stumble across a rock that once came from Mars. After scientists analyzed the chemical content of some meteorites found in the Sahara Desert, Antarctica, and other places all over our planet, they came to the shocking conclusion that lots of those have a Martian origin. In many sci-fi movies about space, the main character accidentally gets into an asteroid belt and has to try hard to get away from countless rocks that threaten to damage their spacecraft. Well, it's nothing like the real thing. The only asteroid belt astronomers know about is located between Mars and Jupiter. There are thousands of asteroids in this region, but they're so widely spaced that the chance of collision is almost zero. Now, beyond the orbit of Neptune, there's a mysterious Kuiper belt filled with massive icy objects. The most curious thing about this space formation, though, is that scientists fail to explain the pattern of its movement. The only explanation they have is that Neptune might be hiding from our sight a ginormous planet. This hypothetical planet has already got the name Planet 9, and all we have to do is wait until its existence is confirmed, or not. Unlike what most people believe, there's water all over the solar system. And someone should wipe it up, huh? For starters, it's a pretty common component of comets and asteroids. You can find water in the shallowed craters of the Moon and Mercury. Mars has some ice at its poles, too. The same goes for smaller members of the solar system, like dwarf planet Ceres or Saturn's moon Enceladus. Astronomers even suspect that Jupiter's moon Europa might have some life. Under its frozen and cracked surface, there's likely to be liquid water. Europa is smaller than Earth, but it may host a giant and deep ocean that could contain twice as much water as all the oceans on our planet combined. Now, you might know that Mercury is the smallest planet in our solar system. It's also very dense, the second densest after Earth. But this mini-planet is getting even smaller and denser. After the Messenger spacecraft did its first orbital mission at Mars and mapped the entire planet, astronomers found out that Mercury is very likely to be a tectonically active planet. On its surface, there are cliff-like landforms, also known as fault scarps. They're quite small, which makes scientists think that they appeared not so long ago. In other words, the planet might still be contracting. Now, look at these magnificent rings. You can say without any doubt that this planet is Saturn. People have known about its ring since the 1600s when the first telescopes were invented. But Saturn isn't that unique. Nowadays, we know that every planet in the outer solar system, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter, has a system of rings. And since we've started talking about the planets of the outer solar system, let's have a look at Neptune. This ice giant is around 30 times as far from the Sun as our home planet, which means it gets less light and heat from our star. But the planet radiates a lot more heat than it's taking. If we compare Neptune to nearby Uranus, we'll see that even though Uranus is closer to the Sun, it emits almost the same amount of heat as Neptune. Astronomers haven't figured out why it happens yet. One of the most unusual moons in the outer solar system is Uranus's moon Miranda. It has craters, sharp ridges, and other bizarre disruptions on its surface. Such phenomena are usually the result of volcanic activity. But Miranda is way too small to generate such a large amount of heat on its own. Astronomers think that it might be the gravitational pull from Uranus that heats and contorts Miranda's surface. But so far, it's just a theory. And there's no truth to the story that Miranda has a brother moon, Lin-Manuel. Finally, our solar system isn't the only one in the Milky Way galaxy. Far from it. The galaxy we live in houses over 100 billion solar systems. And if it's just our galaxy alone, what can we say about the whole universe?
No, you can't see the Great Wall of China from space. It's a cool myth, but it's still a myth and has nothing to do with reality. NASA confirmed it, and now you know it too. Still, the wall is a magnificent place, and you're lucky today. I'm taking you there, so fasten your seatbelts. We're going to China, the biggest Asian country, the third biggest country in the world, and with over 1.3 billion people living there, is still the most populated one, even though India is getting closer and will probably take the first place soon. China is also one of the oldest nations in the world. It has 3,500 years of continuous written history, but the civilization existed long before that. Historians believe that China wasn't populated by settlers that came from somewhere else. The Chinese civilization most likely got formed from local Stone Age people who lived on the territory since the prehistoric period. So no wonder that the country is full of history and ancient landmarks, and I'll show you a couple. We are at the Great Wall. It's over 13,000 miles long, almost 5 times the distance between New York and Los Angeles, or a bit longer than the distance between North and South Poles. This is impressive, even today. Of course, it didn't take a day to build it. In fact, the wall was being built for centuries. Maybe you know that ancient cities had walls around them to protect the locals from the invaders? Yes, Chinese cities had them too. The first Chinese emperor united the country in 220 BC and got a brilliant but very ambitious idea to turn all city walls into one big wall that would defend the country's borders. So the process started. In the beginning, the wall was made of rammed earth and wood. Every next emperor would pick up the big wall project, strengthening and extending it, repairing, but also modernizing construction techniques. Some used brick to build the wall, some moved on to granite and marble blocks. Watchtowers and platforms weren't there from the beginning as well. They were added 19 centuries after the construction started. So the wall is quite inconsistent in terms of material, but it only adds more charm to the construction and shows how much effort and time it took. You can notice that some bricks have writing carved on them. They were left by the workers who were building the wall. The purpose of those writings is quality assurance. They contain such information as location, quantity, and responsible officials. So in case of problems with the quality of materials or constructions, it would be known who was responsible for that. Also, mind that the wall is poisonous. To prevent erosion of the wall by insects, arsenic, a poisonous chemical element, was used in construction. So better not lick it in case you had this weird urge. The construction stopped at the end of the 19th century because the wall lost its strategic and military importance in the world due to technological advances. Walls are way less efficient than they used to be, coming close to zero efficiency. So the construction lasted over 2,000 years, still making it the longest construction project in the world. Unfortunately, today the Great Wall isn't in the best shape. It's estimated that only 8% of the wall is in good condition, and the rest is considerably damaged. Also, around 1/3 of the wall has disappeared without a trace due to both natural erosion and human damage. Also, many bricks were taken away from it in the last century to use in building farms and homes. The wall is being deconstructed stone by stone even today, but this time by tourists. Quite a few of them take a stone as a souvenir. That's a total of a lot of stones, considering that over 50 million tourists visit the Great Wall every year. So we're not taking a souvenir from our today's trip, just preserving the memories. Let's now pay a visit to the Forbidden City. It's an imperial palace that took 16 years to build and was completed 600 years ago. To this day, it's the largest palace in the world. It has 980 buildings and over 8,000 rooms. Why forbidden? Well, centuries ago, ordinary people like you and me couldn't just walk the streets of that town, since it was considered a divine place and was home to the emperor. No one could enter or leave the city without the emperor's permission. Today, the Chinese more often refer to it as former palace, but of course in Chinese. I just can't pronounce that. The designs there aren't random at all. The details reflect the traditional Chinese architecture, and even the colors are chosen with the help of feng shui. The roofs of the city are yellow, which represents the supreme power of the emperor. Most walls and pillars of the city are red, representing fire, earth, and strong support. The floors there are made of so-called gold brick. These are not actual gold, but surprisingly, they are just as valuable. It's very hard to make them, and especially to copy the ancient technique. 2 original tiles from the Forbidden City were sold for 800,000 yuan. It's $115,000. You can also see animal statues on roofs. Just like colors, animals have meaning in Chinese culture. Dragons, phoenixes, and lions are the most powerful ones. Dragons symbolize strength and good luck and are crucial for the culture. They appear everywhere, in idioms, legends, astrology, art, and so on. In ancient China, emperors were considered sons of dragons, so it seems like the Targaryens aren't the only ones after all. And ordinary people weren't even allowed to have items with dragons. As for a phoenix, in Chinese mythology, their rare appearance during the ascent to the throne of a new emperor is a good sign of harmony. In feng shui, it's also a symbol of luck, and when used correctly, it's believed to bring positive energy to the house. Lions signify strength and power. They always come in pairs, a male and a female, and they're the guards. The number of animal statues on the roof signifies the importance of the building. The city is made of wood, and without any nails used, they are considered violent, so they aren't welcome. You can imagine that a wooden city is a serious fire hazard. A little fire and the city with a 6th century history will quickly turn to ashes. So, fire prevention is taken very seriously there. The city has a whole bunch of firefighting equipment, and there's even a special fire brigade that knows the whole layout of the city better than their own apartment and watches the city every day. Walking around the city, you can notice something very unusual. No birds are sitting on the roofs here, ever. When it was built, the birds were taken into account, and the engineers constructed the roofs in a particular way to ensure that no bird can land and sit on them. The roof spines are wider than the width of birds' claws, and the slope of each roof is higher. Also, the roofs are made of slippery tiles, so the birds can't land there. What do they have against the birds? Well, this way the city stays cleaner and looks more magnificent. So, there are no birds, but there are over 100 cats in the city. They actually are an important part of this story. Some of these kitties are royal descendants. You see, 2 royal dynasties that lived in the city kept cats. The dynasties later collapsed, but the cats stayed in the city and have lived there ever since. Of course, some stray cats have joined the royalty over the years. But hey, no one minds it, and no DNA test has been made to see who's royal and who's not. After all, they all equally patrol the city, hunt mice, and possibly some stranded birds, and guard the city. So all cats are welcome.
And there's the kickoff. Imagine watching your favorite team square up with its rivals. If you're in the stands cheering them on, then it'll be even better to see them run up and down a cool-looking patch of green grass. That's why most pitches have different grass patches for your entertainment. The only player on the pitch who's allowed to touch the ball is the goalkeeper, and you can easily identify them by the different colors of their jerseys. They were asked to wear different colors so that they can pick them out from the crowd. This tradition started more than 100 years ago when jerseys looked slightly different and the pace of the game wasn't as fast as today. The only thing that remained constant is the size of the ball. For 120 years, the football shape and size have not been changed, seeing that this will affect the athlete's overall performance. If you're about to shoot the ball past the goalie, then you would know the exact force, pressure, and spot where to kick it. Athletes train for this ball specifically. Changing it would mean training athletes to figure out a new way of doing things. I mean, there won't be much change if the ball was only slightly bigger or smaller, but this is the sweet spot for the ideal football size. Oh, almost forgot. If you're a US viewer, you of course know that when I say football, you think soccer. Now, ever wondered why they wore jersey numbers? Just like how the goalie can be identified from the crowd, a jersey number identifies a player on the pitch in the sea of other players, and each number represents something. When a player is signed to a club, they have to be registered to a jersey number. While the player can sometimes pick what they want, some jersey numbers are reserved for the specific position they're playing in. A striker cannot wear the number 1 jersey. That number is reserved for goalkeepers only. A striker is a player whose job is to score goals and has a great awareness inside the opposition's penalty box. They get the number 9 jersey. In consecutive order, the numbers 2 to 5 is for defenders who can play in various positions. Numbers 6, 8, and 10 are midfielders who play in the middle of the pitch. In general, they control the game and are the middlemen between defense and attack. You would find them all over the pitch. Number 7 and 11 are wingers. They are the support players for the strikers and also contribute to goals. They're usually fast and tricky with the ball. Traditionally, this is what the numbers mean, but nowadays, clubs don't usually stick to it. Some midfielders can have a number 7, and some defenders can wear a number 6. These days, numbers 7 and 10 are deemed as the most popular jerseys for people to buy and put their names on the back. Now, some clubs have actually retired certain jersey numbers, which means after an incident with a player who wore the jersey, the club will decide not to let any future player wear the jersey number. Some football clubs also have a reputation for jinxed jersey numbers. This usually happens when a player wears a number 9 jersey and has big shoes to fill after the player who wore it previously scored plenty of goals. The new player might be a perfect striker, but there's something about wearing that new jersey number that makes them get the yips, or in other words, lose their focus. It might be easy for some players to lose focus, especially as they grow older. Now, a football player will start to come down from their peak in their mid-30s. It might not seem that old for other professions, but in sports, particularly in football, 35 years old is considered old and close to retirement. Wow. Expect if you're Kazuyoshi Miura, who plays for Yokohama FC. He's considered to be the oldest professional Japanese football player currently on the pitch. He's 53 years old and plays as a forward in attack. So what? That makes him kind of a geezer in football terms. Football is for all ages and is one of the oldest sports known to us. Even though it's most famously associated with Brazil or England, there is evidence that dates back more than 2,000 years ago. This evidence suggests China was home to the original footballers. But England took the sport, polished it, and made it into the powerhouse sport it is today. They created some rules, including forbidding touching the ball unless you were the goalkeeper and domesticating it to limit the violence. Now, it's no surprise that the oldest football club in the world is in England. Sheffield FC was founded in October 1857 in a city in South Yorkshire. That means the club existed before the tragic accident of the Titanic and before the Eiffel Tower solidified itself as a landmark in Paris. It's no wonder football is the most popular sport in the world. The World Cup ranks in billions of views with the whole world tuning in. The road for any country to qualify is tedious and long. Every country in the world plays. That's right, your country is technically playing in the World Cup. But it all starts in the qualifying stages, which happens over years. Every country plays in the qualifying stages, except a few selected countries and territories. They don't get all the attention and are slowly eliminated until you have the strongest teams from each continent. Fun fact, Greenland cannot host any official football games because of the weather. It's just too cold for grass to grow, which is a requirement from FIFA. Qatar will be the first Middle Eastern nation to host the World Cup, and it'll be the first one to be played during the winter season. The simple reason is that summers in Qatar are just way too hot for attendance and athletes. A regular match is 90 minutes, 45 played in each half with a 15-minute halftime break. During August, teams have a long water break around the 30-minute mark. Summers in Qatar can reach more than 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and humidity can make it even more unbearable. But the winters are tolerable. This will also be a unique World Cup, considering stadiums will have full air conditioning so that no one feels hot in any way. Terrains and climates can sometimes be to a country's advantage. Brazil and Argentina are, without a doubt, the strongest teams in South America. Of course, you have Chile and Uruguay, which have won some trophies in recent years, but it's always down to the two biggest rivals. However, every country shudders when they visit one of the highest elevated countries in the world, Bolivia. Brazil has lost some games there, even with a star-studded team worthy of crushing even the mightiest of teams. But with such high elevation, oxygen levels are lower, which makes it difficult for Brazilians or any other foreign team to play. Bolivians are used to it, and other teams just have to be really well prepared for the game, or carry their own oxygen. Oh, you can't do that? Okay, never mind. Brazil has had some of the best players in the world, and it's no surprise that the most expensive player in the world is Neymar. This Brazilian football wizard was acquired by PSG, or Paris Saint-Germain, from FC Barcelona in 2017 for an impressive $264 million, and no player has since then broken this record or has ever been so close to reaching this value. And guess what? They gave him the number 10 jersey. Brazilians are known for their flair with the ball and the impressive dribbling skills they bring to the pitch. And it's also no surprise that one of the fastest goals ever scored in a professional football match was a Brazilian. Ricardo Oliveira scored a goal in just 2.8 seconds back in 1998. If you were watching this game live, then chances are you'd miss it, considering that you're still adjusting yourself and probably missed the goal from blinking. I know one thing for sure, I'm going to keep an eye out for Brazil this World Cup.
The button on the top of your baseball cap is there purely for aesthetic purposes. By the way, this little thing has a name. Professionals call it a squacho. Its initial function was to hold the four panels of the cap together. As hat making improved, the panels stopped needing it to hold together, and squacho was removed. But hats didn't look the same without it. Soon after, the squacho returned due to popular demand. Originally, high-heeled shoes weren't intended for galas and proms. Back in the 10th century, horse riding was pretty tough with flat-soled shoes, and many riders' feet would constantly fall out of the stirrups. Higher heels helped deal with that problem. The grip was much firmer with them, and they grew in popularity. It wasn't long before they became a fashion accessory to match stylish outfits. Notable people wouldn't want to be seen without them. Riding a horse with fancy heels was the equivalent of owning a luxurious sports car. Even though heels were worn mainly by men at the start, ladies picked up on the iconic trend in the 17th century. It's been one of the biggest ever since. In ancient Rome, salt was so precious that people even called it white gold. With scorching heat and no fridges, its purpose was to preserve food, mainly meat and fish. As a bonus, it made everything tastier. Sal, which is salt in Latin, was used instead of money to pay salaries. Here is where the word salary originated. Rice is the oldest cultivated food in human history. Its origins as wild grass started in a small valley around 15,000 years ago in Southeast Asia. Today, it's served globally as a staple diet and popular ingredient to 3.5 billion people. It would be difficult to imagine a world without video calls you use through your phone camera or laptop. The technology has helped game-changing innovations like working from home. Still, video calls' original purpose is far from how we use them today. The technology was introduced to confirm if the coffee was still in a pot. In 1993, researchers at the University of Cambridge found it frustrating when they took a break to get a cup of coffee, only to find that the pot was empty. So, they invented a device to monitor it and hooked up a camera that provided their computer with a live stream of the coffee pot. Thanks to these researchers, we can work in pajamas now. We know Albert Einstein for various achievements, but there's something he co-invented that goes overlooked. Together with his student, he invented a modified refrigerator. It's not like the ones we use today. In the 1920s, fridges weren't quite as safe as they produced poisonous gases. He wanted to create a safer version that didn't require electricity, without moving parts, and only needed a heat source to operate. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough funding, so the project dried up. Later, in the 1950s, electric fridges became popular. But in 2008, engineers from Oxford University revived this retro design. They're still working on it, but once they finish, the Einstein fridge will come in handy for rural areas without power and people who want to live off the grid. That random QWERTY design doesn't make things easier. In the 1870s, Christopher Sholes invented a layout that ensured typing was twice as fast. But with commonly used letters next to each other, it was a bit too fast, and the machines constantly jammed. So, he then developed the QWERTY design. It forced typists to adopt a pecking style. This way, they would search for a letter and slowly type with their index fingers. The keyboards remain unchanged even today, and people all over the world have somehow adapted to them. The plastic end of your shoelace is an aglet, and people have used it since ancient Rome. Sure thing, they had no plastic back then, so those aglets were made of stone, glass, or even metal. Extra wealthy people could accessorize their shoes with precious metals like brass or silver. What came first, the TV or the remote control? The technology that functions in the remote is older by several decades. In 1898, Nikola Tesla created a machine to control mechanical devices with radio waves. Initially, he tried selling the idea of a radio waves device operating I/O through remote-controlled boats, but the potential buyers were not interested. He was way ahead of his time, as remote controls were finally used with televisions in 1956. As engineer Percy Spencer initially invented something brilliant in 1945, he was working on a new vacuum tube, the magnetron, which was used with early radar systems. While working on the project, he found that the chocolate in his pocket had melted. Realizing the heating potential of the magnetron, he used it on corn kernels, which turned into popcorn. Then, he tried testing it with eggs, but things got a bit messy. So once the yolk was washed away, he built a metal box, keeping the energy within, and the first microwave oven was built. In 1733, a duke in England requested William Kent, an architect, to make a traveling device for his kids. William accepted and built the first ever stroller, but nobody had to push it. Instead of handles, it was built like a carriage and pulled by a goat or a small pony. Only a few were made as it was pricey. More than 100 years later, in 1848, the first stroller with push handles became available and more affordable. Police are often associated with donuts, and there is actually a reason why. During the 1950s in the USA, police officers that worked night shifts found it hard to locate anywhere open for a midnight snack. Donut shops at this time were family-owned. They were working hard throughout the night, providing fresh donuts for the coming day. The shops were vulnerable at night, becoming the perfect relationship. nourishment for the police, and extra protection for the shops. Popping bubble wrap is an excellent source of relaxation, and it's also helpful with delicate packages. In 1957, two engineers glued together two shower curtains, trapping the air bubbles between. This is how the first bubble wrap was made. The result they were looking for was a sort of textured wallpaper. Still, it didn't go well on the market. Sometime later, they tried to sell it as insulation for greenhouses, and once again, they failed. Everything changed in 1960 when IBM needed to ship delicate computer parts. The bubble wrap was perfect, and they continued to collaborate. Using maps with your phone has become a far easier way to navigate, but the old-fashioned handheld maps were once the only option, creating a competitive industry. So much so that map makers would draw in phantom settlements to avoid rivals stealing from them. These fake towns were called a copyright trap. However, one of these fake settlements became real. Agloe in New York was drawn into a map by General Drafting Co. Another competing map maker had also included this town on their own, and the copyright trap was sprung. But in court, they found that in 1950, a general store had actually been built there. And the owner assumed that Agloe was a real area based on the map, so he named the shop after it. So there was no violation found, as technically Agloe was real, thanks to that general store. In 1943, Vesta Stout from Illinois was working with securing parcels. She was disappointed with the poor paper tape, as it would fall apart when wet. So she asked her boss to try to make waterproof tape. Her request was ignored, but she wrote a letter to President Roosevelt with an idea of how to make a better tape. Not only did she explain her concept, but she also provided it with detailed designs. He approved the idea and ordered the changes. The new tape was so helpful for freight transport that everyone wanted it, and they started selling it at hardware stores. In the 1950s, many people would wrap air ducts, and it was then deceptively named duct tape. Still, the adhesive on the sticky side wasn't suitable for cold and hot temperatures, which caused the tape to fall off. Despite this, people continued to use that tape for almost everything else. The original Superman from comic books didn't fly. He leaped from one tall building to another in a single bound. But animators who were working on a Superman animated series in the 1940s complained that the whole leaping thing would look silly on the screen. That's how Superman got his superpower of taking off into the air. Just 20% of laughter is caused by jokes and funny situations. The rest is people reacting to questions like, "How are you doing?" and regular statements. It helps to form social bonds. People who laugh together get closer. We humans are just one of the world's 8.7 million estimated species. This number includes 611,000 mushroom mold and other fungi species, 298,000 plant species, 7.8 million animal species. You've got the idea. There are 4 main facial expressions: angry, afraid or surprised, happy, and sad. But besides these basic ones, you can create up to 7,000 more. By the way, facial expressions that are genuine are more likely to be symmetrical. The mountains on Venus are covered with a snow-like substance, but the temperatures on the planets are scorching, and no snow can exist there. The frost is actually metallic. An apple is almost 20% air. That's why it floats when placed in the water. Mysterious Pacific sleeper sharks live in an underwater volcano in Cavachi. It's not far from the Solomon Islands. Scientists have to send in robots to learn more about these creatures. People can't stand the heat and acidity of that environment. The University of Oxford is older than the Aztec Empire. The educational institution was established in 1096, and the Aztec Empire was founded 332 years later, in 1428. The tardigrade, aka the water bear, is a microscopic creature that's famous for its survival skills. It can live through extreme temperatures from 300 to -458 degrees Fahrenheit, and the pressure that's 6 times stronger than the ocean floor. The creature can also survive in a complete vacuum. Tardigrades sometimes spend almost 10 years without food. Pluto was discovered in 1930 and lost its planetary status in 2006. Within this rather long time, it still didn't manage to make a full orbit around the Sun. The former planet needs 248 Earth years to complete its orbit. In 400 BCE, Persian engineers built an ice machine in the desert. They noticed that ice tended to appear in the shadows during the night. They started to dig holes in the clay in the shaded spots. Then they filled these holes with water. In the morning, they dug the ice out of the holes and stored it in special super insulated constructions filled with hay. This helped the ice last even on the hottest days, and Persians always had something to help them stay cool. Those who cheated in the Olympics in ancient Greece were severely punished. They had to pay fines and could even be banned from any kind of competition. Interestingly, the fines were used to build bronze statues of those cheating athletes near the entrance of the Olympic Stadium with a description of how they had cheated. On average, a drop of water spends around 9 days in the atmosphere before it falls back to Earth. And if it ends up in the ocean, it sometimes takes more than 3,000 years before it evaporates again. John Mitchell was the first person to speculate about the existence of black holes. It happened in 1783. In his paper, he called them black stars. Unfortunately, his theory was forgotten until the 1970s. Raw sweet potatoes aren't actually sweet, but once you start heating them during cooking, a special enzyme called beta amylase breaks down the tasteless starch, turning it into sugar. The M100 galaxy is 55 million light-years away from Earth. This is a mind-boggling distance. The galaxy itself is 107,000 light-years across. It's a bit bigger than our home Milky Way galaxy. In 2006, Qatar Telecom had a charity auction where they offered a unique phone number, 666-6666. An anonymous bidder bought it for $2.7 million. Showers are famous for being able to spark creativity. When you're taking a warm shower, you usually feel relaxed and happy. Your dopamine level grows, increasing your chances of getting excellent ideas. The hashtag symbol has an official name, Octothorpe. It's a made-up word that was created in the same place where the telephone came from, Bell Laboratories. Back in the past, when there were no terabytes or even gigabytes yet, megabytes used to weigh a lot. The first computer, which was built in 1956, had a hard drive, or something similar to that. This hard drive's capacity was 5 megabytes. But the cabinet it was kept in weighed around 1 ton. Butterflies taste food with their feet because their taste sensors are there. If you were a butterfly, you could taste your pizza just by standing on it. Octopuses lay from 20,000 to 100,000 eggs at a time. The mother octopuses doesn't eat for half a year, protecting the eggs. When baby octopuses get born, they aren't bigger than rice grains. A big oak tree can drink 100 gallons of water a day, and a giant sequoia usually consumes 500 gallons daily. The inhabitants of Setenil de las Bodegas in Spain literally live under a rock. People work, study, and go for a walk beneath a huge rocky outcropping. Their homes are built right into the side of the rock. However hot it is outside, you still won't be able to cook an egg on a sidewalk. The highest sidewalk temperature can be more than 140 degrees Fahrenheit. But to cook an egg, you need at least 158 degrees Fahrenheit. Concrete is a great heat conductor, but it's not hot enough to make breakfast. There is a sea with borders defined not by land, but by ocean currents. It's the Sargasso Sea in the Atlantic Ocean, not far from Bermuda. Several currents create a large still area of salty water filled with floating seaweed. Hummingbirds are tiny creatures, but one particular species, the bee hummingbird, breaks all records. The thing is so minuscule it often gets mistaken for an insect. The bird also weighs less than a dime. Hot chocolate tastes better if you drink it out of an orange cup. Researchers asked 57 volunteers to try the same hot chocolate out of red, cream, white, and orange cups. Almost all the participants agreed that the chocolate tastes better when served in orange cups. It proved that the way something is served influences your perception of its taste. Gravity-defying geckos have millions of tiny branched hairs on their bulbous toes. This system lets geckos stick and unstick their feet at breakneck speed, scurrying across surfaces at 20 body lengths per second. It's a proven fact that when you're on the computer, you blink less. In everyday life, you blink around 20 times per minute. But when you're using a computer, it's only 7 times per minute. What's even more interesting, you also read 10% more slowly when you're looking at a computer screen or any other electronic device. African buffalo herds often make decisions by voting. For example, when they choose where to travel, animals would stand up one by one, look in a particular direction, and then lie down again. In most cases, the herd then moves in the direction that's got the most looks. One bamboo species holds the world record for being the fastest growing on Earth. It grows 35 inches per day. When some Massachusetts residents feel like playing a song or two, instead of grabbing a guitar, they go for a typewriter. In 2004, the Boston Typewriter Orchestra performed for the first time. The orchestra members produced unusual music with the help of old typewriters and have already released one album. The horseshoe crab has eyes all over its body. The creature has 10 of them, some on top of the animal shell, some down on its tail, and the rest near its mouth. All these eyes help the crab get around.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay